I don't know if anyone is here right now, but I'm back. We'll find out if anyone else is. It's really unfortunate, but really, really fucking unfortunate. But it just I'm in a situation here. Um, just trying to get myself up and running again. Fuck, I hate when this happens. Really fucking it doesn't happen very often. Fuck, when it happens, it ruins my fucking day. Yeah. So anyway, uh, here we go. Try to try to restart. I'm not probably no one is out there. But here's what it is.
I think. Hang on. The bigger question I was trying to ask beyond that was is the American with Disabilities Act, is it more beneficial than it is the negative? Because I'm getting the idea you guys would rather just scrap it all together.
I would have to think about it a lot. Like the parts that we're talking about or how I see it applied more often than not. I have no problem, like in theory, with people with disabilities having certain protections, particularly when it comes to public functions and government functions. That I understand. When it comes to private businesses, etc., I don't know. Now, I take umbrage with your claim that I'm saying some forms of discrimination are okay. LSP, and I'm so sorry, I can't see your name down there. Are you? Because I'm looking. What? I'm sorry. What? Black American Made? Is that?
Yeah, just say BAM. It's fine.
Yeah, I thought you said you was fine to not hire people if it was too cost prohibitive.
Well, here's the question I have with you: are you guys both against all forms of discrimination?
No, I don't think anybody is.
That's why I clarified.
So that's exactly the point. Yes, all of us are for some form of discrimination. For example, if I say that you have to have a bachelor's degree to qualify for this job, that's a form of discrimination against people that don't have a bachelor degree. We all accept that that's acceptable. What I'm talking about is if something is cost prohibitive, in other words, it will cost me more and therefore I will make less money because I'm hiring this employee, I should have the right to say no. I choose not to do that. I have a right as a business owner to not lose money.
I'm curious. Do you also have the right as a business owner to not hire black people if you just don't want to hire them?
I don't know. It's a different question. It's a different form of discrimination, but we could talk about whether or not that would be possible. What I would say is we don't even need to get to that place because if a particular person, for any reason, be it they black, be it they Muslim, be it they Christian, be it they man, whatever, be it they disabled, if I could make the claim that this is going to lose me money or I'm going to make less money, that is a form of discrimination that as a business owner, I should be allowed to apply. Similarly, I should be, if I'm just choosing between lactose or LSP, and I say, holy shit, LSP is so much more productive. He's going to help make me an extra $30,000 a year. I should be allowed to discriminate against Lactoid by hiring you. And if part of that decision is they would both be equally productive, except Lactoid would require $30,000 of accommodative equipment every year to accomplish that, I should have the right, just like in the first scenario, to say, no, I don't want to hire Lactoid because that's going to cost me $30,000.
Again, you're hiring in an Arab neighborhood and hiring the Arab person who applied would make you more money since they speak the language. It makes more sense, and it wouldn't be discriminatory if Lactoid.
You should have the right to do that.
But that is that. Yeah, I mean, I get what you guys saying because those are some laws that I disagree with. The positive discrimination shit doesn't necessarily help people. But
I'm saying is that's not what happens in practice. Again, we're talking about this like this isn't how 99.999% of businesses happen. Like when you there's when you go to Hooters, like technically Hooters a man can apply, but it's a commonly known thing, and they'll even say that like, oh yeah, my waitresses are pretty girls. That's what that's who we hire for these positions. It's well known. Nobody's getting sued because of that. It's just
they get sued a lot. Hooters get sued a lot for this particular reason.
I think they're going out of business because
they've won some of their lawsuits. They've also lost some. They've had to make settlements on a lot of them. It's actually one of the reasons why they're struggling right now is because they keep getting sued by these lawyers who are like, you got to hire men.
Competing restaurants too, like Twin Peaks came in the game and so on and so forth.
Yeah, they're also getting hit. These kind of like the restaurant of attractive women like serving you food is going the way of the dinosaur because of people like me, unfortunately.
I think the argument or the discussion about like ramps and stuff is interesting, but the individual things like Rob brought up, like people getting standing desk, right? Like everybody's like, it's just a desk, but all of the other accommodations that come along with those things, this all costs employers money that they may or may not be willing to spend on individual employees. And
or able.
And I think they
Or
typically
able, right, right.
Use
Well,
able,
don't.
use able versus willing, right? It'll help your argument a little bit.
Well, listen, and it gets to a question like you could extend this even further than what we're talking about. Take it to minimum wage laws. If I own a business and Lactoid agrees to work for me for $6 an hour, why the fuck shouldn't we voluntarily be allowed to engage in that transaction? Right? Like, because what happens is what you see is once you give the principle that the government is allowed to force telling people what they have to pay other people or that they have to take prohibitive measures, cost prohibitive measures, because that's just the law. That's what you have to do. All of a sudden, the people that are hurt the most are one, the small businesses that can't compete with the big corporate places, and second, the consumer. Because once the small business goes out of business, and this exact situation happened in my hometown, we had a mom and pop store that was like, serious, just go pick up your produce, like just a little 5 and dime store. Because of minimum wage laws and particularly because of the lockdowns during pandemic, they went out of business. And what came up right next to them? A Dollar General. Dollar General has no problem. They can eat the short-term costs. Now, when you used to want to go get some produce or you wanted to get a box of cereal, now the price goes up because there's no competition in this little town. So literally, if you drive 20 minutes to the local Walmart, you're going to pay less than you would at this Dollar General and such. But that's what happens once the government gets in the business of saying, no, we will tell people who they have to hire and at what wage they have to hire them at. It's that principle which I'm criticizing.
Wait a minute. So I just looked up like the way the ADA's framing, and sure you can say you have to take it to court. I don't know, but the ADA specifically outlines
reasonable accommodation
plus unless it would cause an undue hardship, and so you can make that argument.
But hold on, you can make the argument, but whatever a reasonable accommodation and an undue hardship is, like over time especially, has been
very open to interpretation.
Become very open to interpretation, and this is affected like politically. Like right now, generally like lawsuit, because this is just a reality. The younger generations, like millennials and Gen Z, are actually just worse with money, like just financially in terms of understanding the concept of money, and are much more prone to hand out massive judgments in lawsuits. So right now, the amount of money that's being paid out in judgments and is exceeding inflation by a tremendous amount, right? Like it's one of the fastest growing expenses on the U.S. economy right now, and you're seeing more and more nuclear verdicts. You're seeing just generally a lot more payouts happening on this. Right. And that's because ultimately all this stuff is going to come down to the question of a jury, and the business is like, do I trust a jury? Potentially like half of them are Gen Z and they openly hate capitalism. Can I trust this jury?
Do you have that evidence to show the demographics of juries, that it's half millennials or half Gen Z?
No. I'm just saying, like, if you get a jury that's half Gen Z,
but you made an association that increase in monetary settlements is driven by millennials, unless I misunderstood, like millennials and Gen Z being bad with the money.
Yeah.
So shouldn't that correspond?
Like newer generation.
They're making up juries at a disproportionate amount?
No, they're making up more of juries than they used to because they didn't exist before.
But let's say if you have one more millennial, like I'm just trying to track it in terms of like, do you have any data showing that, like, I don't know what the actual makeup is. I'm ignorant. Like, what is the general age?
So hold on.
If I show that the average age of a juror is like 60 years old, does your argument hold? Or that pretty much the vast majority of jury duty participants are 60 years old, does your argument hold?
Listen, my argument is that as time goes on, you get more members, not necessarily the average member, but more members of juries that are younger, right? In terms of like the newer generations, obviously like Gen Z and millennials, because they didn't exist before. We know, and this is easily searchable, these generations have a kind of very worse conception of finance and money than prior generations. And they are much more prone to hand out large judgments and to interpret laws specifically against employers.
Do you have any evidence showing that?
Yeah, you can. I can provide you the evidence of the amount of money in judgments, especially for employment-related matters, skyrocketing compared to almost any other metric.
Your argument of millennials and Gen Z.
I don't think we have to get hung up on the jury part.
But here, this is important because like I do employment law. And right now in the field, as all the people I'm talking to, we're all saying, fuck, these juries are not like before, especially since COVID. These fucking juries will hand out millions for nothing. Like we have to settle cases. We got to settle them early because these fucking juries are out of hand. And we keep getting newsletters from all these legal associations saying, nuclear verdict here, nuclear verdict here, nuclear verdict here. Here's like 4 analyses showing like the level of payments that are being made out on these fucking judgments skyrocketing. Every professional that I talk to,
I'll agree.
That's
with
probably
that.
less to do. That's probably less to do with age and more to do with
You're
populism.
making a claim. You're making a claim about the cause, and I'm disputing that.
So
unless
the
you
cause
actually
is
show that.
the cause would be irrelevant if we could. So I guess you could put in many factors. It could be many factors such as younger juries. It could be, I don't know, people are more likely to. But
politics
I'll
are
just
going.
tell you, according to this,
changing,
I just looked it up. According to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Institute for Legal Reform, some of the numbers they showed was the median punitive award increased from 35 million in 2017 to more than 87 million in 2022, with the mean topping 690 million that year. So you can see from 2017 to 2022, in that 5-year period, you had more of a double in the media punitive award offered by juries. Now you could say, is that because the juries are getting younger? Is it some other factors? It doesn't matter, because the point Lactoid's saying is the reasoning is unimportant. Is it because younger juries are what? It is that those punitive damages are increasing. And so what happens is, it's not just a matter, like, sure, I agree with you, Pam, and others. You could say, yeah, but it's rare. Sure, but the rarity doesn't matter when the punishment is deemed as excessive. So do you want to risk running afoul of this? So you might say, you know what, fuck it, I'll get in the hole $10,000, because getting in the hole, even though I do think it's cost prohibitive, even though I think it is an unreasonable accommodation, am I willing to risk a lawsuit? And I think Lacto could probably speak to this. Most of the lawsuits for shit like this probably never end up in a jury.
98% of cases settle.
Yeah,
98% of cases settle.
So by not spending the $10,000 on the quote reasonable accommodation, which you think's prohibitive and unreasonable, you may end up settling for $80,000. So you just say, fuck it, we're going to hire the person with disability. And look, this is what the negative, like a negative side effect of a lot of this shit with sort of, I'm sure everyone would get up in arms about this, but with sort of DEI in general, right? You're not afraid if the white man puts his name in at your place and you don't hire him, that there's going to be a lawsuit that you discriminated him for being a white man. But a person with disabilities, a gay person, a black person, a woman, a Muslim, any other groups that we consider minorities, there's always the chance, even if you legitimately didn't hire them because there was someone more qualified, that you could get a lawsuit. And that
all these
shit
people have
matters
higher
over the
unemployment
average.
rates, though. So it seems like that doesn't. Business owners aren't like, we have to hire all these people. Every group you named has a higher unemployment rate than every other
they're not
group.
applying for jobs.
Okay, so then we would have to verify that piece of data. I'm just saying that, like, this, it does matter how rare something happens, because again, even if we don't want to use the murder analogy, like, there will never be a system that exists that you can't make an argument. But what if it's abused? Then it probably shouldn't exist at all. Like, it has, like, we have to deal with how often, how relevant, like, are these things actually happening before we throw away every system. Because I promise you, any system you name, whether you like it or not, there's a way for it to be abused, and we can come up with cases in a country of 340 million people.
That may be true, but three things. One, I've already explained the two differences of this is, one, someone getting it wrong is different than actually using the law as applied and all agreeing that it's bad. And second, when it comes to that point, that
it would be getting wrong if the law spells out unreasonable, like causing undue hardship or unreasonable accommodations, and you're saying that, like, a settlement requires you to make $80,000 in annual payments to hire someone on for $13 an hour. I think we could easily come to a reasonable standard of that's getting it wrong.
No, but there's a difference between legally getting it wrong and ethically getting it wrong. The example you're talking about with murder maybe we shouldn't have murder laws because legally sometimes we get it wrong and we send someone to jail who actually was innocent, right? There is no ethical claim. Ethical claim of murder is murder, right? And so we would say ethically that person deserves to be punishment. Here we're saying
the legal standard.
Please let me finish. Here you're saying it may be unethical for someone to go out and file a lawsuit because they require $80,000 of accommodation and they're not hired, and therefore they file a lawsuit and get a $50,000 settlement. That may be unethical, but it's legal.
That's not legal. That's not what the law would be implied incorrectly in that matter.
That is not the law being applied incorrectly. That is the law being applied correctly. That follows the letter of the law.
No, it doesn't. The law says the exact opposite.
No, Bam. So again, there's enough gray area. So, like, for example,
yes, there's gray area in everything. Words are gray.
Well, but this is important, right? Because if you're seeing this gray area consistently result in, like, something we don't like,
it's not consistent. That's the argument.
No, but hold on.
It is.
It is consistently across the country. You're seeing, like, judgments, these nuclear verdicts, like, expanding far greater than, like, almost any other price category. And that is driving up insurance rates, which again is going to cause small businesses to struggle to pay those premiums to even exist in the first place. Like yes, even if there's still a minority of times that you get hit by with $100 million judgment because like there was like some small thing like this, even if that is still a minority, you don't think that, especially when buying insurance, that the higher frequency of those things is going to affect your ability to exist as a small business?
Again, we can point to negative externality. The law of murder, the standard for murder is what, beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah,
so it's not 100% confirmed. So someone can go to jail for a murder they didn't commit, and it can legally fall within the ethics of the law beyond a reasonable doubt.
You're right. And what if we lived in a country and all of a sudden, for some reason, like we started noticing juries just started convicting people of murder like at like 4, 5, 6 times the rate than they ever had? Would we start to take a look at that and say, wait, hold on, maybe we got to tighten up our standards for murder?
Maybe we should just get rid of it and legalize it. Because you're arguing for tightening up the standards. You're saying it shouldn't exist. We should get rid of it.
Rob is arguing for tightening up the standards. I think that he's okay with some level. I take the more radical position because of my belief in freedom of association. If I own a small business, it is like, I think it's unethical to force me to have to associate with somebody who I don't want to. Now, it's obviously not nearly as unethical as murder, right? But it would be unethical to make me do that if it's my business.
If I may also, maybe to get to what you're saying, Pam, you're making a claim that it's very rare, right? So I looked this up. Now, I will admit this is just from an AI. This could be total bullshit. But just some data that it gave me real quick, and I'll check into this later. It says, according to the law firm Seyfarth Shaw, over 11,488 Title III lawsuits were filed in federal courts in 2021, marking a 4% increase from 2020 and a 320% increase since 2013. Right. So already you can see since 2013 to 2021, we have a 320% increase. Now, I asked it, which of those were considered frivolous? So it went with various law firms that have spoken on this and estimates on the percentage they think would be frivolous. It gives a bunch of details to explain how it came to this, but said it's impossible to totally know. But it estimates 20 to 30% of them are what we would be considered perceived frivolous, particularly in states like California, where it's more laxed and juries are more willing to sort of go with this. So if we take 30% of 11,000, like you're looking at 3,000 to 4,000 a year of frivolous claims of lawsuits that could result in millions of dollars of damages, of punitive damages. So in that case, right, if you're a small business and you see up to 3,000 cases a year that are frivolous, that could result in you, not just your business going bankrupt, but you yourself going bankrupt, you're probably going to go ahead and kowtow to what is an unreasonable accommodation in your mindset. I don't think that meets your criteria of rare.
Sure. Okay. So if you're arguing you want to tighten up language, that's one thing. But it seems like you're saying that like federal businesses are one thing, but when it comes to private businesses, you want the law to basically not exist.
I'm saying that's not.
No, I'm asking Rob, because Rob's talking about federal. He said he's seen room for federal businesses, or he says in other places he's not positive. I'm just curious. What is your position?
You mean federal
right now? My position that I'm making is that I think there are places of the ADA where it makes sense. However, when it comes to specific things such as the ramps that we talked about previously and the language of reasonable accommodations, I'm against that. I think that you should be able, even if it's slightly cost prohibitive, you should have the right as a business owner to say, I choose not to hire someone that I think will cost me any amount of money. I think you should have that right. And I think and I think you can see how this would apply in like how negative it would be in other ways. Like imagine that, I argue that as, I don't know, this would be a fucked up situation, but, I am a Jewish person that wants to get hired at, a grocer of Islamic fashion. And I say, look, if I come in here, I get all these, people hate me here. So you're going to have to hire like $100,000 of security while I'm working. Elsewise, should you be required to do that?
Because they'd be violent? Because the Muslims would be violent? But
because for whatever reason, the people.
This is hypothetical. I'm fine with dealing with that. Yeah, I said I can I would. The thing is, I think if we can go scenario by scenario in a lot of these things, we probably agree. But I would in my opinion, I feel like the law would go ahead and solve for it. But I'm gonna meet you somewhere. I'm gonna try to meet you somewhere and see if you may go a little further. But if you think this is a better starting point, I think as far as just dealing with the dealing with the basics about accessibility, as far as like wheelchair ramps and things of that sort, I'm fine. I'm fine. Similar to like private home ownership, I'm fine with like existing buildings being grandfathered in. As far as like, oh, okay, I bought a build, like I own a building that was made in the 1860s, and it just doesn't have that, and I don't feel like going through the process of adding it. That's
already
fine.
the case.
But sure. But I'm saying, for as far as new constructions, are you okay with like, okay, you're already going through the process of building a new building, just like lighting and electricity and all that needs to be up to code. If this is for commercial purposes, where you're also as part of this, probably multi-hundred to $1 million investment you're already doing, part of that being a ramp, like some way of people getting in and out.
No, I'm still against. I think that where I would meet you, and you're probably not going to be happy with this, is perhaps the law should say if you choose not to be handicap accessible, you have to clearly identify that. Because the one thing I could see that potentially the law would have to get involved is, let's say a handicapped person's able to hop the curb and get in there, but because of that, they haven't reasonably planned through and assumed there would be further accommodations, and all of a sudden there's a fire in the building. Now that handicapped person is incapable of getting out in a safe manner. So I think that it should have to be properly advertised that, look, there are not easily accessible entrance and exit routes to this place. I think that would be reasonable enough to go through with this.
Okay, so are you anti-building codes generally, or commercial building codes generally?
I'm assuming that they go too far, but the idea of there should have to be some code, like,
you have to have a fire extinguisher,
exits and stuff like that, fire extinguishers. I'm okay with most of that shit.
So why is a ramp like crossing the line into like not okay?
Because it's not a matter of safety, it's a matter of convenience. Like, again, like if we accept the principle, because there are people that don't have use of their legs, then every building in this country, or whatever, the ones you're talking about in your specific scenario, every new building built has to have a handicap ramp that's not going to be for a domicile. So anything that could be considered commercial or an entry to someone coming in off the public has to have a ramp. Then why stop there? Why not say that there are other forms of disabilities that they have to accommodate? Why not say that they all have to have Braille? Or if there's audio, they all have to have a sign language interpreter, or that they all have to have lights that are inoffensive to people with autism, or that they have to have sounds that are a low decibel. Like, why stop there? Where is the limiting principle that says, well, for the convenience of people that don't have use of their legs, every building must be this, but not for the convenience of people with autism? We don't have to make adjustments for them.
I think just based off of population sizes, I think the amount of people who have trouble getting upstairs at some point in their life is probably a pretty significant portion of the United States population versus like people who like have issues with lighting. I'm not saying they don't exist, but like, again, I think things are going to be based off of like how many people does this generally impact.
Okay, so just to be clear, then what you're saying is the reason that these laws should exist is because once we reach a certain threshold of people that are affected by that. So, for example, if only 2% of the population is affected by fluorescent lighting, no problem, no laws for them. But if it becomes 10% of the people, then all of a sudden we have to change the law?
Is that not a reasonable expectation?
No,
like, based on how many people are actually impacted by something? Is that why would we do laws for any other reason?
It's also contradictory because, like, the market's going to actually react better when the group of people is larger because it's more money. Like, if we're talking about like let's say there is like 10-20% of the population that has XYZ issue, businesses are going to be much more incentivized to address that issue because that's a big portion of their like market base at that point.
Sure, I understand if you can always make an argument that the market could solve for these things, but
again, it's more likely to with the bigger proportions of the population, right? If it's like less than 1%, businesses might not accommodate these people like voluntarily because
neither will the law.
Well, no, the law would. I mean, unless it's too small, then I would agree with you that like the law base, because ultimately these laws are a result of like enough people getting upset and lobbying the government to do it. So you need to have like a group that's like big enough to like lobby the government, but too small for like the market to I guess adapt for their satisfaction. So there's really this like midpoint really of disabilities of like that ADA particularly addresses.
And Bam, can I ask you real quick, without looking it up, given that you've given this answer, what percentage of Americans do you think are in wheelchairs?
Again, I don't think it's specifically wheelchairs, but like people who have difficulty with steps.
Yeah.
I would say I would say at that point, I would say probably somewhere in the 30 percentile, especially then with baby. Especially because baby boomers are the largest generation by far, and I imagine a large portion of them and behind all have difficulty with steps to some degree. Like
my grandmother is not in a wheelchair, not wheelchair bound, right? Can walk, is ambulatory, but has a great deal of trouble moving around, right? Like it's very slow. Like steps are a nightmare for her the entire time. Like ramps are so much better for her. So yes, there are people who are wheelchair bound. Something you have to understand about uh, disabilities, right? And I alluded to this earlier in our discussion of the blind individual, right? Is that like everything else, disability is a spectrum, right? So when we're talking about mobility issues, there's a spectrum of that where like wheelchair bound is on the farther end, is even further. You can be totally paralyzed and be on the far end. But then on the other side of that, right, there are people who are just have a bit of mobility issues, or who need a cane, you know, like all around there. And all of those people could benefit from easier access.
Again, even if you want to deal with it, I'm about to say, just so you can respond to both of us at the same time, even if you want to say that like this is an example of the market solving for it. The reason I brought up the example of like every church in the United States of America, where they'd be rural or in a major metropolitan area, ends up having a ramp is because churches tend to have older populations, and older populations just typically deal better with ramps. Like you'll never have a church that like you're gonna be like, wow, we don't have a way of getting here. We don't have a ramp. Like they just do.
That's not true. The church I went to growing up didn't have a ramp.
That's
there was
crazy.
like 8 of us that went to it, but
that's
the
crazy.
truth. And there were at least 2 women in walkers. Our organist was like 84 years old. It was 3 steps. That's all it was to get in. But I mean, it was a church with 8 people. It's now closed down.
Well, maybe it's just 3 steps for them. I don't know, but like
maybe if y'all had, maybe it would still be open.
maybe
the church I went to, which was certainly not especially wealthy, right? I think they built their own ramp. I haven't gone there in fucking years, but like I know, like having driven past it, they installed a ramp. Sometimes after I stopped going there. But like yeah, like my grandma couldn't go to that church if it wasn't for the accommodations that they made. But
I just think
go ahead, sorry.
It's like a threshold issue that you're going to have here. And of course, every law has a threshold unless we're like total ANCAP. So why is the speed limit 65 instead of 66, 67? I get that, right? It gets absurd when you get to the thresholds. However, what me and Lactoid are talking about is the principle of it. If there is a huge population of people that would use this particular service that would require a ramp, then there is a financial incentive for that business to put a ramp. Should you force those people to build a ramp? That's a different question completely. And again, like I don't understand the difference between, so you're saying, for example, if 3% of the population was all that had mobility issues, would that trigger your demand for a law that all of these buildings have ramp, or would that not be enough? I'm just looking for a general idea.
I'm about to say, honestly, if it was 3%, I don't know what, I guess 3 in 100 people, it would be, I could understand the argument for public buildings and schools and things like that, and like that. I don't know if I would care if every of it being a law, if it was affected such a small portion of the population. But the reality is, like, I just see it does.
So when it comes to people in wheelchairs, it looks like about 1.1% of Americans are in wheelchairs. Granted, I understand that there are issues with mobility. When it comes with autism, it's something like 3.3% of Americans are diagnosed with autism. Well, I understand it's a scale, right? But
probably like 4 people with autism in this chat.
But listen, there would be people without autism, right, that also might say that they're bothered by bright lights, etc. Right? So like it becomes it like all of a sudden it becomes like this like situation where it's like, well, we've entered the government in saying that, like, listen, it's not for safety reasons. It's purely for, we think people have right to have access to your private business. And so therefore you have to make accommodations for them. And like your percentage argument, then how would you feel about this? If I could successfully argue in a 100-mile radius, there's only 2% of the people that use my business with mobility issues, would you then be in favor of that law saying, okay, then you don't have to have a ramp? If it's purely about the percentage,
I can see you making a local exception. I could see that. Like I can see a law saying that, like, yeah, this area just doesn't deal with that.
Yeah. So what I was thinking, and look, I don't think to Rob, Nora, and Lactoid, and I guess Grid as well. And I'm sorry, guys, I apologize. I was having technical issues, and it's been a fucking bad mood. It's really unfortunate. So Hopefully we have some people watching. But yeah, it is what it is sometimes like that. But in any case, so I think our conservative friends aren't being unreasonable, right? Like, I think you guys are bringing really good points, except for that Islamic one that was awful. But other than that, Rob, I think you also are making very good points, here.
The point,
like,
real quick, the point about the Islamic thing, it has nothing to do with saying Islam is more violent. I'm just saying if there was a reason that this person, through no fault of their own, needed increased security, should you be forced to pay for that increased security? Maybe it's because they're trans and people would be violent against them. Maybe it's because they're gay. Whatever, insert your reason.
I hear you. I'm not going to make it a big thing. I'm going to concentrate on the core of what you're talking about. So I had to leave like before I gave my thoughts. A friend Lactoid asked me my thoughts on the ADA, right, and then I had to leave because of technical issue. So what I was trying to say was that I think the world after the ADA is so much better for our disabled friends than the world before the ADA. However, that doesn't mean that the ADA as constituted is perfect, right? And doesn't need any sort of adjustments, right? And so, like, I thought you brought up, all of you brought up some really interesting points. Like, okay, so we have a small portion of the population that's being affected by this. Sometimes, like, not tragically small, but like astronomically small or microscopically small. And it seems unreasonable, especially like a small business in a rural town, right? I'll take your word for it. I haven't seen these lawsuits, but I'll take your word for it that they exist. That now I have to add a ramp here, where like there's no one wheelchair who's wheelchair bound or who has significant mobility issues that ends up coming here, right? And that just seems like completely unreasonable. Fair enough, right? So I think there are solutions to this, in that like. You could say that within population centers, right, that reach either a certain threshold or just like either a certain threshold for this specific type of disability or just or like have a certain number of millions of people total, right? Because then the likelihood that people would have these issues also increases, right? And that even if they don't live there, they might travel to this population center to and need those accommodations. Then maybe that's where you apply these things, right? And then of course you could have exceptions for businesses who have who make a certain amount of profits, right? Like obviously Walmart can absorb all these costs in a way that any others can't. But in the end, I hear my friend Bam as well, and that there will always, no matter what system you create, you're going to find ways to exploit it. There are going to be ways to abuse it and the whatnot. But I don't fall into what Scott would say here. If Scott was here, he'd be saying, well, the fact is you create a regulation. And so there's these unintended consequences. Yeah, whatever. I'm fine with that. There are going to be unintended consequences. But if the benefit to society is great enough, then we should make a system and adjust that system to have the best results. There is a great benefit to society that we have the ADA, right? Accommodations for disabled individuals, right? And especially because what people think is disabled in their minds, right, is a very specific thing. People look at individuals, they say, hey, I look at Lactoid, and is Lactoid disabled? They'll say no, right? I mean, if you get to
ride
know
a motorcycle,
mentally,
it could happen at any point, right? You don't know.
And mentally, certainly
happened,
already, right? But like, but the thing is, like, if you don't appear disabled, people don't think you're disabled. But that doesn't mean you don't need help. That doesn't mean you don't have other issues that aren't necessarily apparent. And these things, and having a framework to accommodate for these individuals has helped so many people beyond what the immediate statistics are for like we said, people in wheelchairs, right? Because it's helped everyone who are just elderly people. It helps people with fucking children, right? because sometimes when you have children, it limits the things that you can do, and it makes using facilities difficult. These things have helped on a very large scale. So yes, I acknowledge everything you said. So I'm sorry, I've spoken a lot, so I apologize, but I acknowledge everything you've all said. I think the problems you're saying are certainly valid, but enough to get rid of the ADA for those who are advocating for that, certainly not. In my opinion. Sorry, Grid, you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that was really interesting is how everybody was kind of sticking to like retail businesses and that sort of thing. Whereas when I think of the harm that the ADA actually does is in regular corporate offices, in business or not businesses, but like apartment buildings and things like that, where there may not be a single person that needs a wheelchair ramp or a stair lift or any of those things, and yet they're required by law to have them because they're open to the public. And this is onerous. This is a burden that those companies have to bear. And why? They may and it just sits there.
But what if,
unused.
So what if
not for nothing, but like, does the fact that these are tax deductible like expenditures not factor into this at all? Like, yeah, these are something the business will have to bear, but they write it off in taxes. They actually get taxed.
No, that's not how that works.
I mean, you write it off doesn't mean that they still paid for it.
You're telling me they? Okay, so you're saying that they cannot deduct from taxes the expenditure for building wheelchair ramps.
You can use you can use tax deductions to lower your total amount of tax burden, but the amount that you're going to spend, like, because you don't pay obviously like the full amount. It's not like you get that money back in the form of some kind of like credit. It's simply a deduction, right?
Yeah.
Factoid, I have to say that since you've been riding the motorcycle, you are much more butch than before.
Thank you. Yeah.
Yes,
like
he's
a
moving
is a crazy
on the
word.
scale
Yeah.
from
I don't like the
feminine
word
to
butch. I don't like the word butch.
You're much more lesbian now.
Yes.
I prefer
He was
maybe
just
another word like
he was trying to find a
masculine.
straight way to say sexy. You looking good, like the and the beard.
All right.
It's
It
his
looks like
haircut,
maybe.
right? Sociologic it's the haircut.
It's the haircut, it's the beard, it's the motorcycle.
No, he's much better when he's shaggier.
Right,
He looks much
I'm a
more
little
handsome
hard
as
black,
shaggier.
I got you.
So
but
I want to say real quick.
I guess my suppressor.
To talk about this. It's sort of getting tangentially off this, but in my experience working with people with like adults with severe like disabilities like autism and stuff, the ADA rarely benefited them, particularly when it came to employment. We had a special employment services place. Oftentimes what you see is there's a lot of odorous, like there's a lot of stuff in those sort of laws, if well-meaning, could actually be of a barrier to a lot of people. So let me give you an example. Minimum wage laws. I could never say this, right? I'll just be as vague as possible. There was a person in our town that operated a small business that was willing to pay one of my clients, an adult with autism, $5 to come wash the windows any day that he wanted. Any day, right? He could come for 5 minutes, wash the window, real key. And I assure you he was not doing a very good job. But he was unofficially an employee to my person. He worked there. He worked that. He
was just donating money to that guy, right?
Right. Well, in effect, but all of a sudden, if he slips and falls and all this shit, well, you had this person as an employee that didn't have protections, et cetera, et cetera. What I saw a lot of times was more than sort of the legal ramifications, was sort of the goodwill of people, and particularly a lot of businesses, it just became a matter of understanding. There might be challenges, and we're not saying that you should have to pay this person the same as someone you would pay that doesn't exhibit those challenges. However, if you're willing to make these accommodations, of course, if it's an accommodation like $100,000, that's too much. But if you're willing to say, like, look, we know that they're supposed to be here at 7 o'clock to stock the shelves, but sometimes it might be 7 to 9 because time sort of operates differently with some of the people that I work with. But when they're here, man, they're going to bust their ass for you, and they're going to be extremely likable. And not only that, one of the things you see is a lot of these people with disabilities, what they want more than anything else is to be as normal as possible. So they want things like friends or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a job. And so they take pride in that. And I had a person, for example, that got a job washing dishes at a Fuddruckers, right? They were washing dishes in Fuddruckers. They were 11 times in a row Employee of the Month because they brightened everyone's day. It seems, and it is low skilled work, but they were so effective at it because they actually took pride in it. And nothing within the American with Disability. Now, I'm not saying the ADA should be totally scrapped. I'm not saying there aren't protections within that are important. But all I'm trying to say is a lot of this, like, well, you have to provide these accommodations and shit. That shit scares employers off. When the truth is, a lot of times there aren't a lot of accommodations necessary. And if you could just talk to people and operate them not through like litigiousness, but just operate like as people and say, like, listen,
litigiousness adds force, right?
What's that?
Like what accommodation? Litigiousness adds force, right? So it's like you can't just discriminate. That's probably important. But what is it that employers should be obligated to provide, right? What sort of accommodations, if any? Or do you think it's just absolutely none? It doesn't matter, to hell with anybody.
Cost prohibitive. They should not be required to require. Once we get outside the like sort of safety for a general member of the public and a general employee, they should not be able to required to pay anything that's any way cost prohibitive to them.
Okay. I think the ADA actually has a provision for cost prohibitive like expenditures.
They do.
No,
They
it
say
says,
that, they say that specifically. But
let me rephrase: not cost prohibitive, that cost anything. I shouldn't be forced to pay $2 more. I should not.
That's what he was saying before.
But I'm curious, and maybe it will just say that like this is the market solving for itself. Let's say that you are a big businessman and you own big business, and your business is up like 27 of the steepest steps. I don't know why this is your business model, but this is the way you wanted to build your business. And you see 82-year-old grandma with the walker, and she's wants to go up the steps to your store to get the peas. And on the way down, like there's no rails or anything because we living on the edge. Like if she fell off of your 27 steps and like cracked her head open, do you feel like she should be able to sue?
Well, there are laws that aren't with the ADA that say that there are certain safety measures that have to be taken, such as railing. Your stairs have to be not in a state of disrepair.
Building codes.
Again, this has nothing to do with the ADA, but I would say, although I think they could be falsely applied, unlike what I'm talking about with the ADA, I think in principle, it's probably okay for the government to enforce standards, health standards on sort of their property. So you have to have a reasonable fire exit. You have to have fire extinguishers. You have to have sort of, stairs, railings, things that, so I would say in principle, again, this would go against what Bam was saying earlier. Although I think this could be misapplied and people could sue for that litigiously, I do think that in principle, I'm okay with those sorts of laws existing as opposed to laws that say, look, you should be forced to hire someone even if it costs you money. So that to me is different.
But I'm saying that like even if you have like I'm gonna say I work in insurance, even if you have railing, if someone falls, even in your house, technically they can you can be sued. So I'm asking you like, are we okay with that? Are we okay with like someone who doesn't take on those risks? Like I put up the railing, whatever, and grandma still falls. Are we like? No, well, you can be sued in your home, but
He's saying if you didn't want to put up a ramp, and then there's a huge staircase, and the grandma still falls, and you didn't want to put up a ramp, we don't have to. But are you okay with being sued for that? Is that still all right?
No, I'm not. What I would say is that's grandma's fault for trying to climb up the stairs. Now there's a separate issue, right? With should you have to have like my stairs are crumbling. Right, that's a different issue. We have building codes, right? But that's completely different from the ADA.
Well,
if a person, for example, if I don't have a ramp and someone with a wheelchair decides I'm going to try to go down the stairs in my wheelchair and they fall down those stairs, no, I shouldn't be sued. That was their choice to try to utilize that egress, knowing that it wasn't safe for them.
Stores have Braille. Should all products in stores have Braille labels?
I don't think so.
No.
Not the produce.
Not all do, but yeah.
I don't think it has to be Braille. I think it can be accommodation, which I think businesses currently do. How much does this cost? Like I was looking for this. What's the price for these, honey? And somebody will tell them, oh, those are $6.99.
I don't.
What if they could only hire? What if they only hired blind employees, and so nobody can read the?
I don't know why. I don't know why we shouldn't, like, in terms of, like, at least strive. I'm not sure all. I'd have to think about all, but like,
on the cucumbers.
I don't know why we shouldn't strive for that, right? Like, for most products, because I think we could actually accommodate a lot of products, right? With should
Walmart provide hearing?
Your argument if something's good, that's versus like saying that like a company should be in trouble for not being able to do so. Again, we may reach a world where that's something to strive for, but I don't know if you could say like a reasonable expectation that you have to tattoo Braille into every piece of.
No, there's not tattoo. Okay, that's a weird way of putting it. Where you could
just print it on the price label and then people can just scan right over. It's really not that difficult. right?
like having literally the relevant information. Like I imagine, and like I'm not familiar with all the products available to our blind friends or accommodations, but like I imagine you could just like get a sticker that you could put on a thing and that just has the braille thing on there, right? Like if it was the case, if and again I don't know, let's just say this is the case, right? This is the case if like on that same cucumber where we put other stickers, right? Like bananas, like a banana, right? Banana, you have like a sticker on it, right? Like Tropican or something, but it also had a braille, like the sticker had a braille rubbing or whatever. Well, yeah, sure. If you could just put a sticker on there, then why wouldn't we do that?
Sure, we can, but again, you're talking about having to. What if you reduce the prices?
Yeah, so I'm thinking like if there is, I have to put more thought into this, but like I think there might be a reasonable case for putting braille on just about everything, right? If we are to the point where we have reasonable accommodations, or we're able to do that reasonably, then yes, right? Like let me compare that to something else, right? But to an elevator, right? An elevator in most buildings, especially when you're talking about new constructions, is something reasonable to include within your design. To have an elevator, right? If elevator technology didn't exist, then it might be unreasonable, even if there are a lot of people in wheelchairs around, to have accommodations, because those accommodations might be like hiring a bunch of people to like physically carry them up and down stairs, right? Because we've reached level technology to have an elevator, right? That changes the math. And so if this is the case, again, I don't know about the accommodations for blind people, but if we do have very cheap abilities to accommodate them, well, then maybe we should actually do that. But I want to say something, but before to 1 second, I want to say something to Grid previously, that like I think what Rob Nora and Lagtoid are saying, I think their strongest case is certainly with businesses. I think my private property, my investment, my my I want to run this the way I want to, right? Like that idea makes sense. But like when talking about like public accommodation, especially when we're talking about housing, right? To say like what you said previously, talking about putting things in like an elevator or a ramp and saying that's owners, especially when we're talking about a new development. No, fuck that. You're saying, well, there's no people who are immobile with or non-ambulatory within this building. Well, of course, because if you don't have if you don't have an elevator, if you don't have those accommodations, you're not going to have them, right? And if you do have them, well, then you might be able to have them. Those people now have an option in the future. If there is no option, then they can never access it, right? So, like, if it's the case that the people in that community can just decide, we don't want to bother these things for any of our housing, well, then that means unambulatory people cannot use cannot be in this town, right? It can't happen. So yeah,
there's a difference, right? Like I think you have a claim to be made if public funds, right? So if there are tax credits, etc., that go into the building of a development, then you would say because public tax dollars have been issued, then there is a question of whether or not you're allowed to have discriminatory practices that would discriminate certain people. In this case, you could consider it discriminatory to not have handicap accessible, right? But if I choose right now to build a fucking high rise on my own dime without any tax credits, etc., why shouldn't I be allowed to say?
So Rob, I'm actually sympathetic to you. I'm sympathetic to what you just said, right? And I would actually probably be okay with that. But like that would work probably in my favor because most of these fucking buildings use some sort of tax credits, government funds, grants. It happens all the time in so many other developments. So I could probably have that accommodation and still get almost everything that I want. So I'll give you that.
That may be true. I think that's a different equation. Hold on, I do think. Go ahead.
If you don't mind. A couple of things. So first of all, I want to get to the non-ambulatory thing in just a minute because that's a fascinating subject for me right now. But the other thing is that why does the ADA while it's not a rule from the ADA, but they strongly encourage like McDonald's to have Braille on their drive-through menus. Who's going through the drive-through at McDonald's that can use Braille? The same thing at the drive-through ATMs. What blind person is driving?
Well, you wouldn't need you wouldn't need Braille.
I think it's just a standard for like all ATMs, and then they're not going to make a different Braille button, you know?
They like tell you what your order is.
Sure?
Right? No,
because the ones on the inside,
I know. I've gone through a drive-through before. I'm not sure you have, right? But it's an audio experience, right? So, like individuals who are unsighted, they may not be driving. Well, actually, they might have.
There's Braille on the menus at McDonald's.
Yes, hold on, no, but you're talking about the drive-through. You mentioned the drive-through, correct?
The drive-through.
Okay, great. So I'm talking about the drive-through then.
Okay.
It's the drive-through one. A person who is because everything's a spectrum. When we're talking about people who have trouble with seeing, there are people who are within that spectrum who still drive. But even then, even if you have some sort of impairment, right, and are still legally capable of driving, right, going up to a McDonald's a drive-through would mean they hear, like you communicate through voice. So it's already taken care of there, right? And
no, but I think when you said
wait, where is the Braille on the menu outside? Because I've never seen Braille on the drive-through menu.
Yeah, that's a real thing. It's a real thing. I've seen it like at 3 or 4 of them, and not necessarily in my area.
I don't know about that. I'll just say, Prom, I don't know if what you said is legally true. I think if you're visually impaired, you have to wear something to correct your vision before you can drive. I don't think visually impaired people. Like they may drive, but I don't think that's legal.
You know, hold on. There is a level of visual. There are people who are medically visually impaired, right, and that they have some sort of that statement does a lot of work, right, because it's a large spectrum. Well, one second. Hold on. I literally can give an example, right? Who's not here today, but I give an example of that, right? Scott, look at him. Dude can't see shit without his glasses, right?
Yeah, but he would legally be required to wear his glasses while driving.
Yes, exactly. Hold on. But it counts as visually impaired, right? But he's still driving. Like I said, which is exactly what I just said.
But he wouldn't need the Braille if he had his glasses on, which he would need his glasses if he was driving.
No, his glasses are going to make him 20/20. The thing that I didn't say they needed Braille for the drive-through is what I'm talking about. I don't know why you guys keep missing that part. So
no, I didn't care about the Braille. I was just saying the first part was correct.
Then stop interrupting, because that's the thing I'm talking about right now.
You said there's people. They said that visually impaired people driving. I'm saying that's not happening.
Yes, there are visually impaired people driving. Exactly. Yes.
No,
just because
that's what I'm disagreeing with.
Oh my God. No, hold on. Are there people?
If you wear glasses, no, you're not. If you have to wear glasses, you're 20/20 while you have glasses.
Hold on. No, that's not okay. Bam. Okay, hold on. Maybe you don't understand this, so let me.
I do. I have glasses on my face.
Hold on. I'm gonna finish my fucking point. So I'm gonna try to do this nice. I'm gonna try to choose peace, right? Before I have to choose violence with you. We'll see. Okay.
I just gave you $25. Say warning, motherfucker.
Shut up. Hold on. If you have if you're using a cane, right, that allows you to move where otherwise you couldn't, are you still have a mobile impairment? Yes, right? Yet you can actually go from point A to point B, that you couldn't do so otherwise without the assisting device, right? But you are still medically impaired, which is why you need it in the first place. If your eyesight is heavily degraded and it requires glasses, then yes, you are still medically, visually impaired, right?
Not while you're driving.
No, but you always are. At all times, 24/7, a person who needs Coke bottle glasses, like our friend Scott, Coke bottle glasses is visually impaired. It happens at every point in his life, right?
But I'm saying while your glasses are on, you have 20/20 vision. You have perfect vision.
Hold on. That's simply a device that mitigates the problem. That doesn't mean that anything medically has changed. It's not his eyes aren't cured.
He's still impaired. He just has a still visual impairment.
I think. Well, hold on. I think you're missing. I think here's what Bam's trying to explain.
No. My point. My point is correct.
Please.
No. Don't please me. No, is my point. That's what I'm talking about right now. Because now he's distracting me from the other point that I was getting to. So hold on. Let's go around. Corey. Are you still visually impaired, right? Do you have a visual impairment if you are using corrective lenses?
I agree with your assessment. It does not
Thank
actually
you.
fix the underlying issue.
Thank you.
It does
LSP.
correct the underlying issue.
LSP.
But it does at a drive-through
Yes.
because you got your glasses on. 'Cause
Great.
You're driving.
Hold on. No. The drive-through is a separate thing. Wait a minute. I
Yeah,
have
it's
to
a
do
separate
this.
thing.
No. Yeah. I have to do this because Bam is distracting me with his nonsense. So we have to do the basics. I'm sorry. I apologize.
Bam
right?
is being
Hold on.
very
I gotta-
reasonable for
hold
once
on,
right
hold
now.
on. I gotta walk us through this because Bam took us here. I didn't want to be here, but we're here now. All right. Okay. Ali, right? Are you still medically impaired, even though you're like visually impaired, even if you're wearing glasses at the
I
time?
got this. Yes.
Thank you. Oh my God, so beautiful. All right. Do you want to go through the rest? All right. Hey, let's
Hold
see.
on. I actually looked it up why they have the braille on the menus, and it's so the passenger can read the prices and enter their PIN number if they have to, so that the driver does. So they don't have to give their information to the driver. So
Yeah,
they would
that
have to
makes sense.
physically get up
But
and
it's
walk
not on the
around.
passenger side, though.
And that's
It's on the driver's side.
required by the ADA. That's actually required by
Sit
the
in the
ADA.
back.
Yeah, they can sit
Sitting in the
too.
back. What if you have two disabled people? We got to have one on the other side too, then, don't we?
So,
All right.
any which way. So,
Everyone in the car
so
is
I think it's a
blind.
simple idea. So
Everybody-
it seems like
driver.
it seems like people understand this very simple
ma'am.
concept. Okay.
No blind people driving
right,
the
so-
car. No.
Lactoid, you want to say something?
All I was going to say is that I am equally skeptical, okay? Maybe even more so for many reasons, more so than Bam here. I think that any kind of drive-through option, maybe if they put it on the other side, I don't know, maybe, but any kind of drive-through option should probably not be required to have braille, because the person driving should be visually acute enough, whether it be glasses or contacts or naturally, they're just that good at seeing. They should be able to see the menu or the ATM or whatever the fuck. And maybe they could communicate to the passenger, hey, this is XYZ.
Yeah, lactoid.
Now,
So
I guess
But
I guess you could come up with a scenario where what if the driver
It's
is
mute.
verbally impaired
Right.
and he's driving somebody who's visually impaired, and they happen to be sitting right behind the driver.
Lactoid.
Yeah.
lactoid. So I didn't get to it because I had to go down the baby path with Bam, right? I couldn't finish my thoughts on the drive-thru.
Listen.
But yeah, like actually you could have like, and our friend Grid beat me to it. Yeah, you could have a passenger who needs braille for like whatever.
We
right?
could
Like,
have anything.
That makes,
That's true.
Yeah, you
But
could
here's the
have.
problem.
Exactly, Lactoid.
I don't think we have to accommodate
because
everything, though.
we live in a dynamic world, right? With people with all kinds of different issues. We should expand our options. Look, something I was going to say previously. Let me say it real quick. Rob, I know you want to jump in, so I haven't forgotten you, friend. So it happens so often, right? You don't even realize it, that accommodations for disabled individuals, right? Like people we consider quote unquote in capital letters disabled, right? Help all the rest of us, or like huge helps for all the rest of us. Here's an example. Now this is not affecting a business.
Not parking spaces.
Oh my God! Hold on, Lactoid. Hold on. I know you got. You got to be up your ass about the parking spaces, but calm down. All right. There's a term for it, but I forget what it's called. But like those cutouts and sidewalks, right? Those have helped so many people, right? Like navigate our cities, right? You can have a town where there's damn near no one who uses an actual wheelchair, but having the fact that you don't have a step in between you and the sidewalk, a ramp where you can like drag things through, right? Whether you're dragging luggage or something or some larger cargo, that's been helpful to everybody, having that little step. It wouldn't have happened if we didn't make the massive investment to change sidewalks across the country to be ADA compliant. Yeah, it's a huge help, right? Like having situations where visual accommodations, like just for computers, right? Where maybe you can get high contrast screens or something. Those can be great for people who are fully sighted.
Having scooters at Walmart, so 'cause when I'm tired, I don't have to walk.
Having scooters at Walmart,
you know?
All these things. No,
They made us work
that's a
in
good
society.
point. That
You
could
don't
be
use those
good
scooters at
point, because
Walmart,
let's say
Sometimes I'm
specifically
really tired and it's hot outside. I
that could have been
absolutely use the scooters.
specifically used for like older people with mobility, right? But you might be able to need that for children or something. Because another concept we haven't actually touched on is that there are like permanent disabilities, or like people being visually impaired, and there are temporary disabilities, so that you in that moment can't do a thing, right? Something that you usually could accomplish, that most people can accomplish, you can't do that thing because of either one, you have an injury that's a temporary injury that will heal, right? Or you have some other factor that mitigates your ability. So like you could have children. You can't pick up your groceries, right? You need someone help you take out your groceries because you got kids that you're carrying or something like that. I'm just coming something off the top of my head. I there's better examples for this, but like because you have children with you, right? You have to manage their children, and if you had something a way to assist you with your groceries, just like if you were in a wheelchair, something to assist you with moving around your groceries, that would be a big help. You are temporarily disabled in that moment. You'll be undisabled later, but you're temporarily disabled in that moment, and those accommodations can be helpful to you as well. So sorry, I said a lot. Rob, go ahead.
Okay, first off, you keep talking about our blind friends and accommodating them. Fuck that. What about my blind enemies? I don't want any of them accommodated so
Okay,
they can
fair
eat
enough.
shit.
Okay.
Secondly, right, like even here, like the example you just cite there, like, well, let's go back to something that was said earlier. You talk about like apparently there's some sort of threshold argument. Now it seems like you're going against that. Yes, what about the blind mute person? And the
I didn't
deaf
say anything about the blind
paraplegic-
mute person.
Well, Lactoid brings up the example, and you're like, sure, that
Helen
could be a
Keller.
possibility. That's why we should have Braille at drive-throughs. It's like, okay, but like, let's look, even if we're going beyond the threshold, what percentage of Americans do you think are blind or severely visually impaired when they wear glasses?
I have no fucking clue. Hold on. But to be clear, what I was saying before is not for the specific situation where there's a blind person,
We'll
a
get to
mute
that, I
person.
promise.
No. But you brought up, so I'm going to respond to that. A blind person and mute person, both in the car. I said no. We live in a dynamic world where there's a multiplicity of situations that come up where people cannot do things through the normal way, right? Or where they're either permanently disabled or temporarily disabled. And having accommodations helps them all.
Right. I'll get to that point in a second. I don't think you're addressing what I was saying there. So if we look at the percentage of Americans that are blind or have a severe disability, even when wearing glasses, it's about 2.5%. What percentage of Americans do you think have a severe sensitivity to light called photophobia? Well,
12%.
I don't.
Please, whoever needed to interrupt, go ahead. I'm sorry. I missed it. I didn't hear
12%.
I know
12% of Americans are blind.
No, they have
Or have
sensitivity to light or something that you were saying.
It's well, it depends. It depends on how you look at it. So when it comes to people just straight up with like rough, it could be as little as 2 to 5%. However, people with chronic migraines, about 80% of them exhibit severe sensitivity to light. In addition, people with chronic dry eye, you have about 5 to 12, or 75% of them, which is a population of 16 to 40 million people. So it's estimated that it's somewhere between 10 to 15%. That would be roughly 33 to 50 million people have light sensitivity. Severe cases, I tried to look up what those would be, and it says that you'd be looking at about 2 to 5%. So there's more people with severe cases of photosensitivity than severe visual impairment, which would mean that if you're literally talking about making it legal to have everything be in Braille at the supermarket, then why wouldn't we say, you know what, in every public accommodation, we shouldn't have bright fluorescent lighting?
I give you a reason right now. What we can do, right, is realize that some disabilities are things that can be easily addressed on the part of the individual, right? And that's not true for all of them. But for some of them, they can be easily addressed, right? And for those, we don't usually bother making accommodations, right? Going back to visual disabilities. In this country, it is fairly easy, right? Not always easy, but fairly easy to access glasses, right? To have that accommodation. So much so that most people, right, including fools like Bam, don't consider like using glasses as being disabled. Really, we don't think about it as a disability when it's absolutely a disability. there are other nations, many other low-income nations, where if you're a person who needs glasses, well, you're not going to get them because there's no glasses, so there's no infrastructure for that at all, right? And you're simply heavily visually impaired, right? And now you are disabled there. The exact same person, and both countries have totally different experiences. But in this country, you have reasonable ways of mitigating that, right? For the visual photosensitivity, my understanding, and my understanding could be incorrect, so I'm going to put that out there. My understanding is though they have ways to deal with that in terms of like the glasses that they can use. There's things they could put over their eyes to deal with that. If that's the case, then yes, you should have. There should be a reasonable expectation of you being be able to get that for yourself.
Okay, so to address this, I think that it would be equal. It would be easy to get rid of fluorescent lights. We'd be able to have that accommodation.
No, it'd be easier for people to have glasses. So we should rather. So if we didn't have it'd be weird to say that in a country awash with of glasses, right, that we should have further accommodations for those very same people who've been able to deal with their disability through glasses. Because why would you? Because we already have that infrastructure there. We already have infrastructure for these individuals who are photosensitive, right? To wear some sort of shades, right? If you can get shades, yes, that would obviously be easier than replacing all the lights in the nation. Obviously, that'd be easier. You know that. I don't know why you're arguing against that. It's obvious.
The threshold arguments are becoming more and more nonsensical. Now we have that every single place should have Braille all the time because of the difficulties of being visually impaired. And so that meets some sort of threshold, even though it's 2% of the population. When more people have photosensitivity, we should say that threshold doesn't matter because there's this another threshold of devices they could get that would be able to reasonably accommodate. And so therefore we don't have to accommodate for them, even though the accommodation wouldn't cost that much money. Hey. You can see that the principle of this is quickly getting out the business out of hand. I'll say this. Since it's anything I say and run afoul pride, and it's going to go off for another 15 minutes on. So I'll just say this point. The other point that I wanted to make is totally nonsensical that you're making, that sometimes these accommodations benefit us all. Okay, well, I know people that are poor at math. And so therefore it would be an accommodation to give them all an accountant. And look, it would benefit us so much when I'm grocery shopping at Walmart if I have an accountant walking around with me saying, oh, actually, Rob, that's out of your budget. Think of the money I'll save. Yeah, I guess you could say that these burdensome regulations could theoretically, if they were free and we would forget the cost that they would apply, benefit everyone. But you could see that that's not a reason that we should force people, compelling them through law to do this. You can see how overburdensome regulations right now in California. You could say these regulations are important, where we have all these building codes that say because of earthquakes and tsunamis and stuff, they have to go through all these permits. And isn't that beneficial for all of us? If I happen to be in someone's home that now has a home that has these earthquake, special ways that they're designed, wouldn't that benefit me? Yeah, it's great. Only what we see is it's going to take you about 18 months to get a permit to rebuild your house you just lost in the Palisade fires. So the idea that, oh, trust us, these burdensome regulations, at the end, they'll benefit us all. Yes, we did have to go through and remake every sidewalk in the country, probably costing billions of dollars. But isn't it slightly more convenient when it has that little dip down at the end of the curb? Yeah, dude, sure, I guess. I don't think that's a reason to mandate that by law.
I just did that here.
Sure. So, well, then to respond, you don't have to respond to this, Rob, right? We live in a complex world, right? Where people have varying situations, some that we can easily list, others that are wild and unpredictable, but that they find themselves in. What conservatives always demand, this is across their politics, are simple answers, the most simplistic of answers. And the simplistic of responses.
Let's just cut everything. Fine. It's pretty simple.
And they're fine with simply leaving other people behind. Right? That's the answer for them. We're okay with leaving these other populations behind because it's burdensome, they'll say, or it takes any bit of effort on our part, and literally any bit of our effort. Our friend Rob said, if it will cost him $2 more to accommodate someone, right? Well, then certainly he shouldn't have to hire them or whatever. But yeah, it's complete nonsense, right? So like you see this all the time from conservatives. I want the most simple answer. I don't care what the results. I don't care who is left behind, and that's like the internal push and pull of our politics, right?
So you don't believe
group of individuals.
This is absolutely true. This is not just for this. This is with homelessness. This is with healthcare. This is the same. This is the same situation for everything. They will nickel and dime you every step of the way to ensure nobody gets healthcare. There aren't, disability access. You don't have IEPs for your disabled students, stuff like that. Every step of they just cut a bill that cut Medicaid for people. Like their simple their solution for everything is let's cut everything.
You don't believe your own bullshit, right? Like for example, you guys seem to have some luxuries right now. You're all in computers. Sell them. Give it to homeless people and people that need healthcare. Why don't you? You're very generous with other people's money.
You could save so many African children.
It's the same fucking story with you lefties.
What you assume, man? I am that homeless person.
I think Rob just proved the point. Like, we should do nothing, and if people want to do something, well, they should just do it themselves. Like that's Rob's
on an individual basis, right? Yeah. And I'm not.
You don't need healthcare. You don't need school. You don't need food security.
I pay taxes, and so I have a say on that poll, and I say actually, yeah, we should accommodate others.
Pay more.
Sorry, I want to
pay more. Why be selfish?
I wanted to pay more. It was dumb. Trump's dumbass that passed the tax government concept. Tax jobs and cuts.
So rich. I'm one of the 1%. I wanted to pay more, but Trump wouldn't let me. And then I sent the fact check to the IRS, and they sent most of it back to me. It was unfair. Hold on, sorry, guys. Sorry. We've already run out of time.
I know, Prime. It's your show. Talk for another 15 minutes. Go.
No, Rob. Sorry, Rob. Come on, please. I'm not trying to be unfair to you. We just have a long conversation. I wasn't part of most of that conversation, but we
guys are lying about the fact that you wanted to pay more.
We're about to enter into a whole debate on the nature of conservatism. We're about to get into a debate right now. Hold on. We're about to get it right now on a nature of fatalism. A lot of the things that we're going to talk about in the debate we're about to get into covers the debate that we're going into now. So hold on. I'm going to transition, and you're going to fucking relax. Right? Okay. While I do that, I'm doing that because we've run out of time. Like I told you before, we have a planned topic, right? And now we've run out of time for the unplanned stuff. So we're just going to transition. But you can bring up a lot of the same things any which way. So I'm not going to be really clear.
I'll talk to you 40 minutes from now when people forget that you lied.
Notice how nice whatever. Okay, Rob. Sheffer, complain later. Complain later. No, I won't. No, I'm running out of time. I'm moving forward. Then you can go afterwards. All right. So thanks all for being here. Much appreciated. This is a Reverie Roundtable. Unfortunately, we were having some technical issues previously. I'm still having technical issues. Bam, thank you for gifting those 5 stars. That must have just happened. It's like literally not showing up.
It just happened. I told you before. I was like, hey, I gave you $25. You said, shut the fuck up.
I didn't.
Because you were telling me about blind people driving.
Okay, well, I stand by that. Sorry, good. We'll have to get to you later. Sorry, I got to transition. Thank you all for being here. This is a Reverie Roundtable. We have a great group of guests here. They can introduce themselves when they're doing their opening statements. But yeah, if you've been enjoying the content so far, consider supporting the channel, subs to the channel, give bits or give subs like our friend Bam did. Consider helping out the channel. We do need your help. So shout out to those people who do assist. If you're on YouTube, super chats are great. We'll read your super chats. In fact, we did have a super chat just recently. Just a few minutes ago, from Alexander, $10 says, should all warning labels also be in Braille? Probably. Actually, probably. That would actually be
who would benefit most from a warning label but the blind? Yes.
Yeah.
Do not touch.
Yeah.
Do not touch on.
Do not touch on it. Yeah, that would actually be quite helpful.
That's what I'm saying. Ben's got it. He's got it. He understands. He knows where I'm at.
So okay. But thank you, Alexander, for the $10. It's awfully kind of you. All right, so let's get to the topic at hand. Topic. Under Donald Trump, there has been a massive, unprecedented downsizing of the federal government. A lot of functions are being moved to the states. Whether this is a permanent change remains to be seen. But this is a good thing. Different states have wildly different budgets, which allows for varying capabilities to actually fulfill these roles. Specifically when it comes to emergency management and response, an activity which can very quickly reach into the billions, should states be left on their own. If critical infrastructure is destroyed and states simply can't afford to fix it, should the rest of the nation abandon them to their fate? Or do we have an obligation to help our fellow citizens in need with our tax dollars? Oh my God, it seems like that kind of relates to what we were just talking about. Crazy, huh? Yeah, we talked about this a bit last week in terms of the FEMA thing specifically, but we didn't really get to dig into this part of the discussion. The government's being downsized, ton of workers being fired, and departments are being shuttered without actually being shuttered. Just like we'll empty their budget and we'll fire all their workers, but like the department still exists, that type of situation. In any case, these functions are
I'll pay for jails and cops, but fuck everything else.
Fuck everything else. So these things are being sent back. Like, specifically, they've said, well, states can handle emergency management. They can do that all on their own. They don't need the function of a thing like FEMA. And we don't have to limit it just to FEMA. We can expand to other parts of the federal government and its functions. I thought you saw that'd be a good place to start. Do we have a responsibility to help individuals around us with our tax dollars, right? We can take that anywhere we want to. Including disabilities. If anyone wanted to do that, I don't know. That might be appropriate for a discussion.
What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't know why. But anyway, I'm sorry, Rob. I'm messing with you, friend. I'm messing with you. But anyway, so let's get started. We're going to do opening statements, go around, we'll start with our friend Lacto, work our way around.
Yeah, I'm Lacto. You can find me at Lacto TV on Twitch, Twitter, and YouTube. If you like what I've had to say thus far, come hang out. Obviously, taxes are bad. This is something that I do actually think is good from Trump, and I think is good in the big beautiful bill. Although there are criticisms to be had, is it does cut spending, and it does I think push responsibilities to a more local level, which I think gives people more choice, and also reduces overall government size. Scott, who couldn't be here, did want me to bring up something that I think is important, which is that we have an example in the world currently of a leader who ran on a program of taking this to the extreme, named Javier Milei, who currently is the president of Argentina. And if you've been looking at Argentina, they've been kicking ass. Their economy is doing fantastic. They've cut inflation. Economic growth is doing well. Basically, by almost every metric, if not every metric, they are doing better than they were before he came into office. And he did it through cutting the fuck out of the government, which I think that it's a proven way to help things get a little bit better. And so my main criticism, I think, with the big beautiful bill really is just the deficit spending. I kind of echo what people like Massey and some other people had a problem with that, because I do think the debt is a problem. But there's maybe some other parts of it as well. I think the ICE spending is a little bit high, but generally speaking, I like the idea of cutting spending. That's a good thing. And so, yeah, good shit.
Thanks so much.
Is Lactoid especially out of focus, or is it just me?
It's just you. You got your glasses. They're not working. You got to have me in Braille. You got to have me in Braille.
You want to be touched, not seen.
Oh God. Our friend Ellis B, unfortunately, is PC crash. She should be back soon. Let's go to our friend Corey.
Well, I'll try to keep it short so that Rob can get his statements out. You can find me on Twitch, Corey Campbell 94, Twitter, X, YouTube, Instagram, Substack. It's Corey Campbell. So it's a nuanced discussion. Do I think that there's something to be said for having a minimum government as possible, but also at the same time, I think there should be things to spend on. But I would say overall, Trump is not doing well, in my opinion, in terms of the spending that he is. As in, I'm in favor of FEMA, but I also understand that FEMA definitely has its flaws. But I'm more in favor of refining and making an institution better, rather than just cutting it completely. And I also do think, just in terms of principle and philosophy, I don't know. Obviously, for me, it's hard to reconcile United States of America, you're all Americans, but no state wants to help each other out, and it's all every state fends for themselves. But that might just be a philosophical difference. Where I do think it'd be good for other states to help each other out, so literally help your fellow neighboring state out. But that's just my opinion. And to keep it short, I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Ali.
Yeah, I agree with Corey. One country, one people. If the people in Texas have a flood, we should all be helping them, considering there are brothers, our countrymen, whatever it may be. Someone in Michigan has a problem, California has a problem. You put your politics to the side, and you just help the state. We are the United States of America. We are not individual states. I know Texas and all people want to secede, and they'd prefer America to be more like Europe rather than the states as we have them. But obviously, if there's a state that's in need, we help them.
Great. Let's go to our friend Grid.
Yeah, I'm a Grid One Motorsports. You can find me at An Unreasonable Man on YouTube and Twitch. I don't normally stream to Twitch, but I have made an exception the last couple of days, and am back streaming to Twitch. We'll see how that goes. I represent the angry gun-toting, meat-eating people, and we're a small lobby, but we have a big voice. So, yeah, I don't. I honestly, I like everything Trump did in this move. He did it succinctly. He didn't over. It's not overburdensome, and I think the states' rights need to be recognized. We fought an entire war over that, and we may end up with another one if the way things keep going. States' rights are important, and we are a republic, not a democracy, and that's very important to remember. The federal government is bloated, it's too large, and it needs to be downsized by a lot. And that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you so much. Our friend Rob, love to hear from you, and you can respond about anything you'd like. Friend.
Thank you. In general, I think that it is absolutely true. Although I'm in favor of some sort of limited social safety net, I think that our government is far too big. And when we're talking about becoming trillions of dollars in debt, it's one thing to say we should be generous and help people out. It's another thing if you look at it from the perspective of our children and our children's children are incurring debt that we ourselves are getting the benefit from, and that they will be put into debt slavery because of the frivolous spending that we have here. So these cuts are necessary, or they're quickly going to get out of control as a larger and larger portion of our GDP goes to paying off our debt. This means substantial cuts are necessary. I wish Trump would make more cuts than what he did, but certainly the effort to try to get some cuts starting to going are a good thing. In addition, what you see is oftentimes the way that this money is spent is things that are antithetical to what people like me, Grid, and Lactoid would believe. So we're told we have to fund USAID, even though 90% of that money in certain instances could go to Democrat-funded groups, and then we give 5% of it to fight AIDS in Africa, and we're told that we're inhuman because of that abuse that's occurred. Now, if you want how this would play out in real world, when you look at the institutional control that these big government people, it's not even just a left-right thing, it's sort of these big government people, of course they have an incentive to say we should continue spending and increase the amount of that spending because their livelihood depends on it. That's how they get their money. So when they have this institutional control and they're willing to lie for personal benefit, well, you get an example of it from this very panel. Our moderator, who's supposed to be a moderator, decides that he wants to jump in at great length and be a debater. And of course, he takes the opportunity to abuse that authority to interrupt whenever he sees fit, and then to talk at great length, getting a chance to respond to everyone that he sees fit to do so. Then at the same time, when he tells a blatant lie, which is another thing that you see these places like USAID and FEMA and other organizations do, and you try to call them out in the lie, they abuse that institutional authority in order to silence you so that that can't be spoken up. So, for example, we saw things like FEMA, where we actually had FEMA agents that admitted that during the disaster in North Carolina, they were specifically told to avoid certain houses that had Trump signs outside of it, therefore not providing help to those. Very akin to what you see with Prime K's and LSP doing here, right? Where they'll just blatantly lie. And so, for example, if you're wondering what the blatant lie is, Prime K's and LSP are absolutely full of shit when they say that they wanted to pay more taxes but couldn't, and they were given a tax refund that they were forced to accept. That's not true. These people, like always, will claim to be very generous with your money, and yet they won't do one step further. Always will be the case with these big government people that want to spend your money. Exactly what they do is moral. Exactly what they give is moral. But if you give $1 less, or if you suggest like, look, there's fraud, waste, and abuse, and we need to cut it out, all of a sudden it's an immoral action. And so you should take that with a grain of salt as this debate goes on, that both our moderator and one of the participants are blatant fucking liars that will then try to abuse the system and the fact that they're moderator to move on so that their blatant lies can't be called out, and then make jest of it during their statement as we get into the topic at hand. That's the exact sort of shit that you see from our federal government and these institutions, which is why we should massively shrink it and leave it up to a more localized government that would have more accountability.
All the agencies to be compared to, I think I'm most honored to be compared to FEMA. Thank you for that,
You're an
Rob.
institution.
I think that was a love letter from him to me, so I accept. Let's go to our friend Bam.
Yeah. Me and Prime have secret Black Democrat meetings, and I heard him say it. He literally said we have to figure out how to get more of Rob Noor's money, in particular. We're going after it. As far as this conversation itself goes, there could be an interesting conversation had here. I just don't know if we will, because a lot of the time this conversation gets bastardized down to big government bad, government good when smaller, when it doesn't really. I don't know. That to me, that statement doesn't mean much. I think that the government should, we as a society should decide what roles we want our federal government to play in our lives, and we should collect tax revenue in whatever progressive and creative ways we can come up with to fund the things that we deem worthy of funding. We can talk about each particular thing. I'm sure within those particular things, we'll be able to find some cases we've heard of abuse or things we don't like happening. But at the end of the day, I do believe that our government should have a responsibility in dealing with federal government should have responsibility in dealing with things like disaster, handling people after natural disasters. It seems that states just don't seem to have the funding. Even if you cut off tax money, they wouldn't have enough the money to properly handle a lot of these situations, because for a number of reasons, state governments can't run deficits because they don't print their own money. Their budgets are limited, and if a state like Texas, which is one of the, it's comparable to some countries, can't properly manage its own disaster relief itself and is requesting aid from the government, it probably would be fair to say that no state can reasonably handle disaster relief without help from the federal government. And all of these things always, like FEMA, always comes at the like I said, comes at the request of the state. And they follow state leadership in their response to these things. And due to situations related to the decisions Kristi Noem's made in regards to FEMA, people lost their lives, and she's directly responsible for it. She's an evil human being who deserves nothing.
LSB, we can't see you, but we might be able to hear you. Do you want to give your statement?
Yeah, sure. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I actually agree with what Bam had to say. I think if you look at your government and you try to figure out what you want your government to do, you arrive at a road with two convergences. On one, you can go the right side, the conservative convergence, and their policy for everything is let's just cut taxes and spending. Right? You got an emergency, flood disaster, tough shit. We're not sending FEMA, we're cutting FEMA funds, stuff like that. Wildfires in California. Yeah, how about you change your California laws and then maybe we'll help you with those wildfires. Like that's the way the Republican Party views like assisting fellow Americans. It's always a competition and it's always a game to them. When it comes to cancer research, for example, like the Trump administration cuts funding for cancer research. I don't think you could plausibly argue that's in the interest of the American people. And I think where people like Scott or Rob usually miss out on these kinds of arguments about like just moving to a privatized model or fairly voluntary is one, the amount of resources required to help people tends to be far greater than any one charity or organization can actually muster, which is why a lot of these groups contract with the federal government. And two, not all states are equally wealthy, right? California might be able to handle a crisis, financially speaking, where West Virginia actually does need a lot of help. And there's no way they could afford to fund like rescue operations and rebuilding and stuff like that themselves. And both are disaster-prone Americans. I wouldn't suggest getting rid of anybody's assistance if they need it. And Trump's administration doesn't seem to really care. For him, it's just been across the board. I'll give you an example from when I was doing research for this this topic, when I was looking into it. Like, what did they cut? Did this help anything? Did it not? I found that they cut like programs that ended up saving like $150 billion for the American taxpayer, right? Over like a 10-year thing. Like they cut this BRIC program from FEMA. And then they cut search and rescue teams so that when you have a disaster like happened in Kerr County, well, let's see, the search and rescue teams take 3 days to get out. The meteorologist who's supposed to be the emergency warning coordinator, that guy is not even filled. His job was cut. It just seems like every time conservatives see a thing, their MO is let's take this away from the people who need it. It doesn't matter if they need healthcare. It doesn't matter if they need an IEP for school. Let's get rid of the Department of Education. It doesn't matter, if their homes were destroyed. We're in a situation right now where Kerr County is debating whether or not to raise property taxes to fund the recovery and rebuilding efforts, because they don't actually have enough funds from FEMA to do it, and FEMA doesn't unlock those funds for another 2-3 years. And everything that crosses Kristi Noem's desk requires her personal sign-off if it's over $100,000, right? So Kerr County is basically left like, what the fuck? Like, we just got devastated by this flood, and now we have to charge our residents more. It seems un-American, this idea that we should cut that funding, that help away from this community that's been just ravaged by a tragedy, needs this help. And instead, we should use it to fund tax cuts for billionaires. And that's where most of this money goes. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from 2017 and the big tragic bill that Trump just passed, massive savings for the wealthy and massive austerity for the poor, right? We cut healthcare from something like 13 million Americans. I'm sorry. No, it's just it. The conservative policy for America is fuck you and your problems. I'm going to get mine. And that's just not, don't take the right road on that converged fork in the road. Go left. Help out. Live in a country where you help your people. Live in a country where you take your tax dollars and you invest it wisely and you save taxpayers something like $150 billion. And don't let morons like Trump cut it, right? Don't elect these people. These people are dangerous to this country. These people have cut aid that's cost lives.
How long an opening does this fucker get?
Sorry, I just had to.
I don't know. You going to whine the whole time?
He's a racist. He's a xenophobe. He's a
sexist.
Yeah,
we got
34 felonies. Okay, what more do you need to know?
He has all of those things.
So we're gonna get started, but we have a super chat immediately. And so I'll kick it over to Grid for a second. Alexander win $10. Can Grid explain what his point is about being a republic and not a democracy? As pertains to our current discussion.
We are a republic of states. If you don't understand that, I can't explain it better.
No. As pertains to our current, I understand we are a republic, but as pertains to this discussion.
Mm-hmm. Yes. How's that not self-explanatory?
Sorry, why did you bring it up in the context of this discussion?
Because people are stupid. So can you explain it to them?
Rights.
Okay.
Literally, it's literally how can it? Man, the civics.
Republic doesn't include like idea of.
Sorry, wait. States. Did you support the military occupation of Los Angeles? You're going to talk to us about states' rights? Did you support the military occupation of Los Angeles?
That has to do with something that's specifically enumerated in the Constitution, which is immigration being the purview of the federal government.
Grid.
You don't need the Marines to occupy Los Angeles to enforce immigration laws.
You do when lefties like the people you support are engaging in violence against federal employees and buildings.
No, you don't. The community there said you didn't. The police said you do not need to send in the Marines. The police outright. And you're not. That's exactly what I'm pointing out. I am for states' rights. I don't want West Virginia to have to shoulder the cost of repairing buildings and homes all on their own. I am for states' rights.
Okay, good. That's awesome, man. How much extra do you write on your taxes every year?
$1 billion. How much do you?
You don't.
You don't know that. I'm a billionaire. I write in billions.
I fucking do know that. I guarantee you don't write in.
And you're so fucking dumb. You just gave me a tax cut. That's how fucking dumb you are, Grid. I'm a billionaire and I donate extra billions. I even donate billions to charity, Grid. How much do you donate? How much do you help?
I love the cope.
That's right. You don't do shit. All right. You're just there to shit talk and you don't do shit.
Great.
But Grid's not the one who's demanding other people pay more. You are.
Yes, I absolutely. Yes, to help people who lost their homes in wildfires. I just told you I did.
Why don't you voluntarily pay more?
Why is he in this conversation? He's not cammed up.
No, he's just having trouble with his camera. I can see it
I don't care.
on the thing.
He can buy a better camera.
Wait,
everyone else is.
You don't get billions of dollars, my friend. You don't get billions of dollars by buying extra cameras.
You buy him a camera.
You would know this if you were conservative.
I like that. Yeah, you camera, but I can't support degeneracy in this way.
Your responsibility to buy
your whole life is degeneracy, my friend.
Okay,
it's unfair.
You're the degenerate who elected a degenerate for the White House who cheats on his wife, right? With a and Jeffrey Epstein's quiet list. But yeah, okay, I'm the degenerate.
Okay. So before we go down the Epstein, right? Before we go, as a group,
would be so much better if we could
where Trump's dick has been. Okay, before we do that, Just quickly, Grid, on that republic thing. Like a republic does require states, right? So I don't know what your state's point has to do with being a republic.
Because as a republic, each state governs itself. The federal government has, in the original documents, and the way this country was intended to be, was limited federal government.
What does a republic
limited
mean?
Federal power. The federal government shouldn't even be.
What do you think a republic means?
We should not have income tax.
What do you think a republic means?
That. It should not exist. Federal
What is
income
the definition
tax
of republic?
is a crime
against
the citizenry.
Hey, what is the definition of a republic? Could you tell me that?
It is a group of states or countries that function as
Blackjoy, do you know what a republic is? Are you on?
I think so. He was talking about the kind of republic that we have, which is
No.
federalism.
No.
He said
it. Don't try that.
Oh my God.
Lie to it.
Yeah,
What's the definition of a republic?
Exactly.
Could you tell us?
Have a backbone
So. Okay, the reason why here's why this is ridiculous. Okay.
No.
Because
What's the definition of a republic?
Stop. No, hold on. What he said was, we're a republic, not a democracy. Now, you're right that like you can have a unitary republic, right? Not federalized, where you don't have these sort of kind of states, right? But he was specifically referring to like being charitable here for a second, guys. The concept of in America, right? We are a federated republic where we have a whole bunch of different states, and the idea with setting this up was that these states have rights and responsibilities. And as time has gone on, more and more of these rights and responsibilities have shifted over to the federal government. And you see the federal government begin to expand dramatically, right? Donald Trump's movement of some of the things in the federal government to the states is not anywhere close to the amount of autonomy that the states had at the beginning of this country. It's not anywhere near. The federal government is still far, far, far larger than the framers of this country ever intended. All that he's saying, and I'll say this too, I think that there is a real point to say, look, like states do have rights, states also have responsibilities, and when you have organizations like FEMA or other federal programs subsidize people living in particular states, you are essentially moving wealth from some people who just based entirely on geography to other people, right? Why should Floridians, maybe this is a hot take, but this is my genuine opinion, why should Floridians be subsidized to live in their state while I, who don't get to enjoy the beachfront, okay, but I live in a place that doesn't get hit by a hurricane every 2 years or every year, why should I have to pay for their lifestyle? Why am I subsidizing their lifestyle when they could come move up by me? They don't got to worry about hurricanes if they come up move by me. Maybe they should pay for that. Maybe they should contribute to their own fund to cover the additional costs that come with living in the area that they live in. And this is the same concept when it comes to rent in New York City or LA or San Francisco.
Unless you're one of a few states, you're probably subsidized by other larger states.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. It's just a situation such that every state subsidizes every state. The economy is not zero sum, and I know you know the economy is not zero sum. Florida contributes a lot to the rest of America, not just in agriculture, not just in tourism, but in other forms of business that they actually do house there that ships all across the country, right? They provide a lot of jobs for people, is what I'm saying. There's a lot of economic activity that Florida provides that warrants them being taken care of because Florida itself is such a resource for the rest of the United States.
You're missing my point. You're missing my point. I'm not saying that like Florida is a net liability for America. What I'm saying is that
should we support them? I told you.
No. What I'm saying is that
net liability.
What I'm saying is specifically when we're talking about FEMA, for example, I pay in a lot more into FEMA than I get out because I don't live in Florida, like anywhere really a disaster-prone state at all. And Floridians get a lot more out of FEMA than they put in. So when it comes specifically to this program, I am subsidizing Floridians to some small degree, but it's not just me. It's people living in all sorts of different states are all subsidizing people. Just
it's also Floridians who are subsidizing it as well.
California. Well, it's
California. It's the whole country.
Well, no. This is again like yes, I understand that like they pay into it as well, but they get out more than they pay into it. This is the concept.
And they're uniquely exposed to hurricanes. Of course they do.
Right. So they should pay more if they're going to choose to live in a place that has hurricanes. And by the way, a lot of people that live there have chosen to move there. They're going to choose to live in a place that has hurricanes.
And they rebuild.
Why should they get a subsidy
so you're in favor of like increasing taxes for FEMA for Floridians?
No, I'm in favor of getting rid of FEMA and having the states handle it.
I thought you just said they
Again,
should pay more, as in like everybody else pays and they pay more.
They would if they had their own state disaster fund.
They probably.
Okay, what do you do?
They most likely
Lactoid.
subsidize your insurance. You get that money back, and what Floridians pay into your insurance.
Lactoid.
No,
what do you do with a state like
Bam? The reason,
absolutely pay more.
No. I understand they pay a lot more in insurance, but the reason they pay so much more in insurance is because insurance companies have to pay out a lot more in Florida.
Sure, but
it's not like
I'm still paying more than they get out.
No,
I think Florida's a net taxpayer, aren't they?
No,
and because
Florida might be a net taxpayer, but it's irrelevant again to this specific program.
No, and specifically in insurance, they still pay in more than they get out because whenever they run on a loss, they end up getting out of the state. For example, I think Progressive just left the state of California.
You're right. There's a lot of states that leave because the department
because whenever you become a negative, because the Department of Insurance mandates costs. Like insurance is one of the most regulated industries in America, and the government decides what you can charge as an insurance company. If you're an insurance company in Florida, the government says you cannot charge more than this, and if you can't make a profit charging that, then you leave.
Then you have no choice. Yeah, you have no choice but to leave. That doesn't
again, they make a profit.
Insurance.
That means they're paying more than they get out of it.
No, it means their profit margins are slimmer because more insurance companies are leaving because they got to pay out more. If their profit margins were healthy, they wouldn't be leaving so much, right?
But they're not leaving the state of Florida.
But they are. You just agreed they are leaving the state of Florida more often than other states.
No, insurance companies are leaving the state of Florida?
Well, no, you're right. Yes, there's businesses leaving California because they are also like a negative business environment for other reasons. For California, it's more political. For Florida, it's more
California,
geographical.
It's related to the fires. I was about to tell you,
Sure, I'm sure that the fires are affecting that as well. Sure, but again, that's whenever you have insurance companies leaving a state because it's too expensive to do business in, that actually indicates that they're having a lower profit margin. So that does not mean that they're that doesn't mean that they're what are you talking about? You think that Florida? Hold on, real quick. Do you think that in Florida they're making a higher profit margin than in the Midwest, and this profit margin is subsidizing my insurance rates?
No, I'm saying they're paying more in than they're getting out.
Okay,
they're making a profit and they're paying a larger percentage in premium.
What state are you in?
I hate to do this. But I just, based on everything that I know, this doesn't feel true. So if you can prove this claim to me, I'll accept it. But my understanding is that Florida is actually a hellhole right now for insurance companies because the weather is particularly
that might be true. They face higher risk there. That might be true. But
just a point, just Lactoid, a point of fact, and I only know this because we own some property in Florida. Insurance companies have been fleeing Florida for the past 4 years, but they're actually more of them are staying currently because of legislative changes, which
DeSantis made things easier.
Loosened some of the regulation on the market. The biggest issue they have is that if you have a house that's destroyed in a hurricane, the insurance company has to build it back. They can't just say no, you shouldn't live there. You should not be there, and we're not going to rebuild it. They will absolutely have to rebuild the house.
And, you're right that things have been getting better because DeSantis did put in tort reform. However, that tort reform move was heavily opposed by who? The Democrats in Florida, right? There was a Republican measure that actually made insurance a little bit better in Florida than it was.
Rob?
Correct.
So just real quick, to go to your point, Lactoid, your beginning point you had on here, right? It seemed to be that there was discussion of Lactoid, whatever state you live in, you saying, why should I have to pay for people to live in beautiful beachfront property? Yep. And the answer to that seemed to be, but Florida is a net payer. They pay in more than they take out. Then if that's true, which it does look to be the case, in fact, I think Florida per year pays $40 billion more into the federal government than they take out. Well, if they weren't forced to pay that $40 billion in, would they be in a better position to deal with natural disasters?
Absolutely.
I think 100%. So, right?
Well, just to be clear, Florida very well may be a total net taxpayer. But what makes a state a total net taxpayer doesn't say anything about the FEMA funds specifically. What it could mean is that, for example, perhaps the average person in Florida is just wealthier, more wealthy people move into Florida. It could also be that they use less disability services, Mississippi is a net taxpayer drain, not because of the policies of that particular state, but because such a high percentage of its population is like on Social Security and disability and Medicaid and stuff like that, because it's a lower income state.
No, I agree with you. I'm merely making the point, right? Like the idea, it's like, well, why should we leave Florida high and dry? It's like, well, we wouldn't if all the states dealt with this on their own and Florida wasn't forced to pay in so much.
But not all states can take care of this on their own. Not all states can take care of this on their own.
Okay,
like we need to address that.
That may
Why
be
not?
true, but when we're talking
They don't have the
specifically
funds.
about Florida, when we're talking
You're telling me
specifically about Florida,
California
they
doesn't
would
have the
have
funds
a
to take care of their
surplus
shit.
if they didn't have to pay into the federal, and that would more than adequately take place of any natural disaster funds that on average they have to spend. Now, to answer
Potentially.
the point specifically, I'm okay with a limited social safety net. The problem is the false dichotomy that's being set up. Sure, I guess if you're a tried and true ANCAP and you think basically the state shouldn't exist, except in limited ways, I'll leave Scott argue how he wants to about the existence of the state. But yeah, if you're that person, that's one thing, right? But I'm not that. I just think that most people fall somewhere in between. So the smearing of conservatives is always like unwilling to give any money. No, the point
Lost to an answer to my question.
Well, let Rob.
What do states do that can't afford to do this their own? What do they do?
I was directly addressing that I'm okay with some sort of federal safety net. You're just not smart enough to understand what I'm saying is you're lying about the amount of money you pay in taxes and all that shit. Perhaps if you'd spend
So
less
you're
time
okay with
trying to make
FEMA.
up-
You're okay with FEMA.
Perhaps if you'd spend less time trying to make
Social
up
safety
what you
nets
think
like
would be-
FEMA. Instead of derailing, why don't you just address what I'm talking about?
perhaps-
So like
perhaps-
FEMA, you're okay with FEMA.
Perhaps if you'd spend less time trying to
Are you
make
okay
up
with
non-
FEMA or not?
Sorry,
You're just going to
sorry,
attack me. Are you okay with FEMA or not?
One second. He's
He's just going to attack me. Like, let's just address the topic, dude.
He's got. We got to let him respond. So let Rob finish.
All right.
please.
Perhaps if you'd spend less time trying to make up non-humorous lies to try to prove some point, you would understand what the people were trying to say. Yes, I'm okay with, in theory, a federal disaster relief fund that the states collectively pool money to help an individual state when they go through some sort of
FEMA. You're okay with FEMA. That's called FEMA, dude.
If you would be quiet instead of interrupting, perhaps
I
you
know.
would
You're taking
answer.
forever to get to a point. You're okay with FEMA.
Hey, hold on. This is the first time we talked. Let's during this section. So let's.
Okay, he's taking a long time to say he's okay with FEMA.
Let us be.
All right.
Just let him finish, please. Thank you.
So
Will do,
perhaps
sure,
I
no
should
problem.
restart my point from the beginning so that
You don't
people
need
get full
to.
Context. Well, I know you don't think that, but you're also
Okay.
a liar.
Rob,
You feel
true.
you get interrupted and lied to
True.
your
Rob,
point.
if you want to, Rob, if you want
I
to
will-
respond, you can. It's fine.
I will make the point that I was making. So in theory, I'm okay with the concept of something that FEMA does. What I'm not okay with the amount of money that's spent there. So the false dichotomy that's being set up is we're saying, oh, see, conservatives just everything for themselves and fuck everyone and blah, blah, blah. And they cite Donald Trump. Some people have even said that Trump and Noam are personally responsible for deaths. I would ask them, how, even under the biggest estimate, what percent of FEMA was cut?
No, it's not related to the cuts.
It was 20% of the workforce.
No, Christy Knowles is directly responsible for some of the deaths in Texas because there was 3 days where they couldn't send out emergency response teams because she didn't show up.
So
till
then
Monday
I'll respond to
undocumented.
LSP and then bam, obviously I'll respond to you later if you like. But so if it was 20%, geez, it sounds like those on the left here that said, oh, Republicans and Trump are fucking evil and they don't want to give any money.
They are.
By your own admission, you're admitting that 80% is still going to them. So what I'm saying
No,
is, what
20% of
you'll
the
see from these
workforce was
lefties-
cut,
what
genius,
you'll
not
see-
20% of the
Dude,
funding.
Again, why don't you just shut up and listen, and then we'll give you the same sort of
Well, if
benefit
you're
you
saying
just
something that's wrong, I'm going to interrupt to tell you what's wrong. You can't
Okay.
just. I'm sorry, this is the Rob Noah monologue hour. I'm going to tell you when you say something wrong.
Rob isn't monologuing now. I've seen Rob monologue. He hasn't monologue yet, but he's about to.
Okay.
All right, we'll wait.
It seems clear to me you were
Fine, make this
incapable
guy
of
cam up.
answering the specific question I
His
asked. So I'll
cam isn't
ask
working.
again. Since you want to say that it wasn't 20% of the money that was cut, it was 20% of the personnel. What percentage of money was cut by FEMA?
No idea. 20% of the staff was cut.
So you have no fucking clue. So you're running your mouth and you have no idea how much money.
Yep, I'm talking about the staff that was cut that left vital services unfulfilled during events like the flooding in Kerr County, such as the emergency weather coordinator whose office was unfulfilled as a consequence of Trump buying them out. No, you ain't proved shit. That is a true statement. That is a true statement. No, you did not. But you can complain about it. No, you did not. No, you did not. That office is still empty. It is a vital office that is still empty.
It wasn't relevant to that area.
I don't want to.
Yes, it is. It's the San Antonio office that deals with Kerr County.
I don't want to relitigate that particular argument. We did it last time. We did it a lot. You were there for that one, Rob, but like we talked about that particular.
Yeah, Rob brought this up about FEMA. We're talking about FEMA. It's naturally it's going to come up. And if Rob's going to ask me about people being cut or staff being cut, I'm going to make it a point to say which staff was cut and how it hurt people. And in this case, it actually what?
Can you show me one time where I asked you about staff being cut?
Yeah, what you asked earlier was how much FEMA was cut, and I gave you the answer how much of the staff was cut. Now, you might not like that answer, but 20% of the staff being cut leaves vital services unfulfilled.
Everyone, let me know when I can talk unfettered. I appreciate it. Go
ahead. All right.
Can I make a point unfettered here? Now, the reason that people tend to go on filibusters is because people like you, LSP, when you ask a simple question and you
just make a point, Jesus.
I'm like, you didn't have to address him. You did start a fight with him.
I
didn't address Rob at all. Rob addressed me.
I gotta meet you, buddy. I gotta meet you. We gotta get through this. I don't want to do all day with this. You can respond afterwards.
The reason that people tend to do these monologues is because when you're trying to have a good faith back and forth, you ask someone a question hoping for a simple answer, and then they don't answer the question and instead spurg out going on some unrelated thing. The point I was trying to make is what we heard from the opening statement, particularly from LSP, is conservatives just want to spend $0 and leave people on their own. That's not true. The highest estimates show that only 30% would have been cut, which would prove that even under Trump, who's supposedly this devilish man that doesn't care about poor people, 70% of the money of FEMA still goes there. And the left will always say, more. For example, I could make the same argument from the perspective of a further lefty when it came to FEMA under Joe Biden. Well, there wasn't enough money there to provide for the Palisade fires or to provide for what we saw in North Carolina or that train that overturned. If only we would have spent billions more. And you people are fucking evil for not wanting to spend billions more. Meanwhile, the federal budget spans further and further and further out of control. More waste and fraud is used, and no one wants to have those honest conversations. The only answer is if you don't want to spend the maximum possible amount of money at every point, then you're a monster that wants people to die, and it's fucking nonsensical. Last point is, Grid already made the argument, and LSP lied about it. People are very generous with other people's money, and yet they're unwilling to even do the bare minimum with their own money. How generous of you lefties to say that we should pay more, things that you're unwilling to voluntarily do yourself.
I think that I do acknowledge and agree that there's some people who believe that there's like an unlimited resource that can a limited resource that go towards everything. But I don't know if anybody's necessarily making that argument. I think that FEMA is probably one of the good things the government does. I think that an unfortunate reality is propaganda, mostly spurred out by the current president of the United States, led to people not knowing what funding was available to them and access to resources. Which is when you talk about Hurricane Helene that came through North Carolina, South Carolina, and parts of Tennessee and North Georgia, I guess parts of Florida as well. Donald Trump came out and he was standing around in the middle of the city saying, "Wow, Joe Biden's not here, and he's only giving people $750 to repair their homes." Even though, number one, the $750 is just immediate relief. It's just, hey, to get you out of your current situation, get a hotel, have something to eat tonight. Then I was say you can come back and you apply for you can apply for specific damages, and people were getting $20,000, $30,000, $40,000. There were other people I spoke to people who lived in those areas who didn't apply for it because they were told that it didn't exist and that funding wasn't there. So I think there's a major problem in the type of information we spew out. I do believe that in regards to I do believe that in regards to types of funding, it's also people have a misunderstanding. Me and Prima had a conversation about this, about what FEMA actually does and what our government programs actually do. They believe that FEMA comes in to rebuild entire cities. They believe that this is like the final solution, when again, they're supposed to handle a lot of the immediate relief. They're supposed to give out some funding related to floods and certain damages that insurance is exclude. But insurance and other programs from the federal government are supposed to come in for the major rebuilds. And the reality is a lot of these things are 10+ year programs in some situations that never recover. And those aren't conversations that happen. I think that we could do better. The government could do better with this emergency funding relief if we could have honest conversations about its goals, priorities, and what actually happens.
So let's go to Corey, who had their hand up a while ago, then Grid and Lactoid.
Yeah, maybe just a quick question. So if I remember correctly, Lactoid, in your opening statement, you mentioned that Trump's bill, it cuts government spending, so to speak, or makes government cuts that you're in favor of. Just curious, how do you analyze it? As in, obviously, we don't know for sure, but let's say, is the bill projected to increase or decrease the debt?
It's deficit positive, so it increases the debt.
Okay, and in your estimation, like, is that like a good trade-off of like potentially increasing the debt by like 4 to, I think the projections are somewhere between like 3 trillion to 4
Yeah,
trillion?
that's tough. That's tough, right? Because you have two good things, which is lowering taxes and lowering spending, and then you have what I think is a bad thing, which is
Do
increasing.
you think there's any
the deficit.
correlation between the lowering taxes and the increasing of the debt, or
Well, that's where most of the increase of the deficit is coming from, because they're lowering taxes, which is, I think, is a good thing to lower taxes. Now, I think the way out of the problem would be to decrease spending even more and to reduce the debt. That would hopefully get the
Doge
deficit
already
under
did all
control.
that. I think Elon.
No,
I think,
unfortunately, it didn't do enough.
2 trillion. Where's that 2 trillion?
I know
That didn't do
those lying
enough.
Democrats got in the way.
Oh,
I wanted to. I look. If you're going to try to say, well, lactoid shouldn't have President Trump cut even more, I'd be like, yes, okay, that's your argument. But like,
You've just
we have
not
what
did
we
the
have,
tax cuts?
and unfortunately, it was like a political tax cuts are
and
good.
I just want to
Unfortunately,
say,
it was a political.
do you think
You're asking me where overall do I feel like it's
is
positive,
this trade-off
negative?
worth it to you?
I think probably. I think it's a good direction when you're starting to see overall spending go down. That should
But
be
it's not
kind
going
of
down.
emphasized.
We're still
No, but
deficit
it
spending.
is.
We're deficit spending to, but the only thing, instead of paying for debt, we're paying for tax cuts. But
spending is down.
Soon.
Spending is down.
We're
Spending is
spending
down.
on the tax cuts.
Look,
Like those
hold
tax
on.
cuts,
Okay,
we're going
okay.
into
Do you know what I mean?
deficit to pay for them.
I understand. Do you know what I mean by spending?
Yes, I understand what you mean. I'm disagreeing. I'm saying that's the wrong definition of spending.
Okay, no.
You're saying
Outlaws.
we're not covering, we're not funding government programs, but I'm saying the government program that we're funding is tax cuts.
Yeah, tax cuts is simply an absence of an inlay, not an outlay.
No, it's not an absence because we're having to borrow money to do it. We're spending. We're to pay for the tax cuts.
Okay, well, if you cut spending, if you lower your total outlays, you can reduce your inlays by more, right? And then you're going to have a deficit. But that doesn't mean that you didn't reduce spending. This bill does reduce government spending. Like, that is a benefit of it, and it reduces government spending by a pretty decent chunk.
If I spent
reduces government revenue by a pretty decent chunk too.
I'm sorry, because I know I'm being really rude.
Which is good.
But if I was spending $1,000 on rent, and you say they're like, okay, give me $500, and I'll reduce your spending on rent to $500. I'm still spending $1,000 towards rent. I'm just giving it to you now. Like the government is borrowing money to pay for the tax cut. They're borrowing money or creating money to pay other people instead of paying for government programs.
Let me use your analogy better. If I make $10,000 in a month, right, and I spend $15,000, I buy a new car for $15,000, right, and next month my income goes down to $7,500, but I only spend $10,000 on a vacation to the Caribbean, I have spent less, right? Because
we're not spending less.
I'm just making less. Our federal government with tax cuts is making less revenue because they're bringing less in through taxes. Hypothetically, though, there's an argument to be made that tax revenues, like with the tax cuts the first time, actually increased when we had tax cuts because more business, etc., expands the total amount of taxes, even if the percentage of each person paying is lower. But nonetheless, even if you make the argument revenues are down, Lactoid saying that may be. And by the way, I think Lactoid probably agrees with me. Deficit spending is bad. It's a different issue. But spending itself, no conversation about the revenue at all. Just spending is down. That's what he's talking about. And I'd further say, this is just a 1 month issue.
In a vacuum, that's why.
Corey, 1 second. Corey, just please give me this real quick. Okay. I will say that I think, I could be wrong about this and I'm open to hearing, but wasn't June the first time that we've had a budget surplus? Meaning that actually we brought in more than we spent by about $27 billion or something like that. So I'm not saying that trend will continue. I wish it would. I anticipate that it won't. But as far as spending, there's a bunch of hypothetical calculations of how much tax revenue will be cut through tax cuts, and those calculations oftentimes are not true. What we can see is right now in June, with the data we have a surplus in June, which we haven't seen since 2021.
It's because the tariffs.
But that's true. I agree. But there's a surplus. So
right.
So is it a legitimate surplus?
Or I think. Well, hold on.
Surplus,
the tariffs, the beautiful bill, like when it's calculating inlays and outlays, that none of this is factoring in the income coming in from the tariffs. And so it's depending on what actually happens with that. It is possible that you could have a lot more money come in to pay for the tax cuts over the next couple of years, right? It's possible. It's not actually in the big beautiful bill. It's possible that separately there could be some additional inlays. And then one more thing that was before we get completely away from it, Rob said before, what about like if Florida, for example, had contributed less to the federal budget and then had more money to spend on its own disaster relief? I'm fine with that too. I was simply addressing the state's responsibilities part of the topic, but the states' rights part of that topic is, again, because with rights come responsibilities. I think that those rights that it would account for that particular part, right? That Florida would be able to have to keep more of its money to pay for its own responsibilities, as opposed to what's currently happening, which is that they're giving more to the federal government, and the federal government's giving disproportionate amounts to them through FEMA.
Let's go to Grid.
Yeah, so a couple of things. First of all, Lactoid's really right on this, and so is Rob. One of the things that people always talk about is tax cuts and spending cuts and all this, but what you don't factor in is that the amount that we save decreases the amount of interest that we're paying on that debt, and that has to happen for us to even get out of it. Second, the only other way that we're going to get out of this mess is by increasing GDP. We can't increase GDP if we're constantly taxing people to death. It just doesn't work that way. That seems like basic economics. Sorry?
How do tariffs factor in there in growing the GDP? Is that projected to increase the GDP or decrease the GDP?
Well, long term it could decrease GDP, but currently it's increasing GDP. Is it not? Or you asked a question. I'm asking you a question.
We'll eventually start borrowing less. I mean, we'll
tariffs,
not borrow. We'll just stop buying
taxes. Yeah, a tariff is basically another kind of tax. Both do affect GDP negatively.
Yeah, it's going to decrease.
Right, so that very good points, like to it. I just wanted to clarify that a little bit because again, the only way we truly get out of this deficit spending is through increasing GDP. The second, as far as states, right? So
hell yeah, I agree with that.
And so the other thing is,
right?
With more taxes. With more taxes, right?
Yeah, exactly.
With less spending, Prime. With less spending.
With more taxes. Like
with less spending.
Trump instituted a tax, and like we got more inflows, right? And so you're for the taxes.
Leftist rhetoric.
Overall, he cut more inflows, and he also cut outlays, which is good.
All right,
the outlays are the big.
Sorry, you're confusing me with inflows and outlays because I'm getting like inflows. That you mean the taxes and outlays? Just use taxes or whatever the fuck, right? Like I'm sorry.
So both taxes and tariffs are money coming into the government, and spending and outlay is when they have to buy shit, right? So if you reduce spending and you reduce taxes,
except that
I think that's generally a good thing.
Increasing our spending in the military, right? More military contracts are being created, and
DHS
terrorism. Terrorism. We have to spend.
And
it depends on where we're spending the money, because if you're spending money internally, that provides jobs, which also increases the amount of taxes that we collect, even though you've actually not raised the taxes. See, this is a problem. You guys
government
are really
jobs?
right. This is not a bilateral thing. There's
government jobs.
Economics are complex.
Government jobs.
Economics are complex, and it seems like a lot of people kind of.
What I'm asking is government jobs. You're saying?
Are you in favor of those?
I didn't say government jobs.
What internal jobs are created then? You said internal spending creates jobs.
Internal to the United States, like when
States.
Boeing gets a contract to build 20,000 planes or something. I don't know, but that money pays people's salaries, and those people then pay taxes, even if it's less overall taxes.
Yeah,
so if you drop the tax rate from one part,
so we want our government to pay for those jobs.
No, they're not. Right? If you allow, I don't know if I'm following what Grid's saying here. If you allow more money in people's pockets, then they'll spend more, which means there are more private sector jobs created. And in fact, we could actually see under Trump, the job growth under Biden, remarkably a high percentage of it went to public sector jobs. Now public sector jobs are decreasing significantly under Trump, but we're still having impressive job growth in the private sector. And the private sector jobs are always going to be better because they are more akin to market forces, where public sector jobs are always going to be less efficient to providing services to the American people. We basically have a bloated government that operates as an employment system that's just an interesting welfare system that sends a bunch of money to government employees that are basically doing dick all.
The number of government jobs hasn't changed
True.
over time, though. It's essentially been the same since the 1960s, even though the
It's true.
population
It's
has nearly
massively going
doubled.
down. Trump's cutting it. That's
No,
what we're talking about.
they're decreasing now, but the government, we've had about around 3 million government jobs from like 1964 to 2025, even though the population has nearly doubled since then. The number of government jobs hasn't changed dramatically.
I don't know if that's true, but maybe that's interesting.
I don't know.
I'll
I'd have
look
to
that up. It doesn't
look
sound
into
right.
I want to pull back to the original topic. Before we get out there.
Yeah. So one of the things Trump, and I was just responding to Lactoid on that, but my actual point was that like Tennessee, we operate at a budget surplus, meaning that our state puts money in the bank every year, even after we pay the federal government all of their evil sin wages. We get, our state actually has about I don't know, some surplus, and it changes from year to year. And because of that, when the storms hit on the Tennessee side, you can see that our surplus was able to help our side out. And on the North Carolina side, there's still people living in tents over there, relying on federal aid. So let's talk about why we shouldn't have why the states should have more and more power and less interference from the government.
Oh yeah, I want to discuss. So Livs Hun, I want to discuss this. So one, there was something that a friend Elijah had said earlier about like Mississippi saying it's the reason why it's net negative is because of not the policies but the people being so poor. Well, I would say the policies have made the people so poor. So there's that. But beyond that, in terms of like why we wouldn't want states to be on their own is because different states are in different situations in terms of their budgetary readiness, right? Even though Mississippi is a fair of a state due to Republican rule, I wouldn't want to abandon my Republican friends. I wouldn't abandon the people there. If they suffer a tragedy, I want to be able to respond to that. And then furthermore, how the same storm hits a state, right? Different states will be different, right? Whether it's a storm or whether it's an earthquake or whatever the tragedy is, right? If it's a multi-state disaster, what actually gets damaged and their ability to respond and repair that will definitely be greater. So like if in one side of the state line, right, between Tennessee and was it North Carolina? I'm not sure what states border which ones. Don't ask me to know basic things like that about my own
Tennessee
country.
and North Carolina.
Tennessee and North Carolina. Thank you. Right. I failed there. I apologize. But anyway, if on Tennessee, right? Yeah, just a few farmhouses get knocked down, pretty easily fixed. But in North Carolina, if a dam gets hit, and it's going to cost billions to repair, that'll be different, right? Like the funds that'll be available for everything else, right? The other houses that have been damaged, right? That'll be lowered. Their ability to rebuild roads, that'll be lowered because we got a dam that we can't allow to burst. Like this is just the things that happen in a dynamic world with natural disasters that strike uncontrollably. But as a nation, we should be looking out for our fellow Americans. If you care about them, actually, no, I shouldn't ask you to care. Never mind. Part of the social contract.
Care about yourself. It helps you. It helps you to help your fellow Americans.
I believe that as well. But I think part of the social contract, whether you care or not, actually, regardless of people's personal feelings, should simply include helping our fellow Americans when they're in need, especially because states, they have a limited ability to do that, and the federal government has a much larger ability to do such a thing. All right.
Put a link about the federal jobs thing in the chat.
So we'll go to Bam.
Otherwise, what's the point of having the Fed, right?
Well, normally it would be to coordinate different resources and response materials to some event that happens. Right, not all states can field the sort of expertise you need for an organization like FEMA, and not all states can have the sort of programs that return an investment for taxpayers by building like resilient infrastructure like FEMA did. Right, Trump's cutting of FEMA has cost taxpayers something like $150 billion. Like that kind of hurts.
So just real quick, like 3 points. One, just on you, Prime. I don't disagree in general with the idea of having this sort of social safety net. The difference is going to be how much we're spending, et cetera, and how it's being spent. So I don't disagree with what you're saying in principle, though. There should be some sort of role. Secondly, Bam, just to you real quick. I'm actually surprised. I don't think in spirit you're that far off from what I'm seeing. When you look at the federal workforce, there's not been a lot of change. Basically, it was 2.5 million in the 1950s to 3 million now. However, the huge change has been in state and local jobs. So in 1950s, it looks like we had about 4 million state and local government jobs, and now we have 19.6 million. This was 2023 was the most recent data that I have. However, as a percentage of the workforce, yeah, it's been, when you look at the percentage of the workforce, about 10% in 1950s to about 13.6% now when it comes to the public workforce. I still think most of those jobs are bloated, and they were probably bloated in the 1950s as well. But I'm actually shocked, and I think in spirit you were correct that that was not as big of an increase as I perceived. Obviously, that's a cursory look, so I'll have to look more into the data, but well done on your part. I think that you're more correct than not on that. Lastly, I just had a question to sort of the lefties on the panel that has this belief that we should put more into the federal government to have this big pull to help these things. Do you blame Democrats then in Democrat-controlled states like New York that want SALT reductions? Isn't that them saying that they want to pay less into the federal pool to places like FEMA? Is that not monstrous?
What are SALT reductions?
SALT reductions are basically when a state says I'm paying into my state government, so I don't have to pay into the federal government. Like
So you as
they've
an-
been able to deduct
Yeah.
that.
So you as an individual will be able to itemize instead of taking the general sort of tax deductions, you itemize them, and you're able to put certain amount of state taxes into a deduction for your federal taxes. So a federal organization like FEMA would get less from a state that has high state taxes, and you're allowed to write off some of those state taxes. This is a big area of disagreement because, for example, Trump and others have suggested reducing how much you could claim on your state level deductions, the SALT exemption.
They already did reduce it.
Well, yeah. So you're for that, right? You would want to eliminate SALT deductions, correct? And you think the Democrat states that are pissed off about that are monstrous because they're trying to avoid paying into FEMA, right?
In principle, I do.
No, I wouldn't think.
Oh,
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
actually, yeah.
No, I mean, people can have different positions on it. In principle, I do. I like in some things, it's kind of like I have to be honest enough to know that, like, oh, okay, I don't live in New York. I don't. That's something that New York cares about a lot, and I don't pay the taxes New York nearly the taxes New York pays. But in principle, yeah, I do believe that. I do believe, regardless of what you're paying into your state, you do have obligations to pay into the broader federal workforce. But I could live there, experience the taxes, and feel completely different.
Change your mind, yeah.
That's fair. Yeah. I'm just trying to make the point. If it's about this moral duty, then a specific state saying, well, it's unfair that we have to pay this much into the federal government because we're paying so much into our state government. Wouldn't you say that they're shirking their moral duty? I'm glad to see that Ali and Bam say no. LSP, it sounded, or you would say you would criticize them. LSP, it sounded like you said you have a different thought on that.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't know about shirking moral duty. I don't know that there's morality to pay taxes. You just have an obligation. That's just the price we pay for civilized society.
So they're shirking their obligation.
But some states are, well, you could say that, sure. But some states are like producer states, they're donor states, and some states are like recipient states. And the states where most of the economic production actually happens tend to be states where it's actually more expensive to live there. And there's a variety of reasons that you can blame the state policies for that. I don't mind that. Democratic policies tend to cost more, but they also tend to produce better results in many of the issues I care about, like homelessness, for example, or food aid, or disaster assistance, right? We could take the example of California versus West Virginia. I posted about it in the chat the other day. They don't all make the same money. They don't all pay the same money. And what you end up with a situation which you exist is what you end up with when you get rid of the SALT deduction is some people in some states are paying income taxes that subsidize other people in states that pay no income taxes.
Well, that may be true, but that's sort of different than what we were talking about previously. It seemed what we were talking about previously is an obligation for all of us to pay into this pool of money that becomes this federal.
Yeah, if you want to say obligation, I already told you, if you want to say obligation, I'm fine saying you can say they're shirking their obligation.
So then even despite the fact that you think that state may be doing better with their own state population when it comes to their social welfare programs, they are shirking their obligation to the federal level. And those are Democrats.
With a SALT deduction, yeah, I just find it to be a neutral good thing because you want people to occupy these states, occupy these jobs.
It's shirking an obligation. Like they're paying less than their fair share when it comes to
They pay more than their fair share.
Okay,
These states pay more taxes.
Cool. Then by the same rationale, then billionaires pay more than their fair share, correct?
No, I wouldn't argue that.
Why?
I don't think
they're paying the vast majority of taxes.
they're paying the vast majority of income taxes, the vast majority of sales taxes, the vast majority of property taxes, the vast majority of other taxes. Those are being paid for by everyday people, especially the vast majority of Social Security taxes.
Doesn't matter.
They
They're
still
still
pay
Pay a higher
higher
percentage. They're paying a higher
Pretty sure I pay
percentage
more
on
on
one
that.
kind of tax, income
No, in
tax.
total, in terms of
Of the
total
total
tax burden,
tax.
it's higher.
Oh, I don't know if that's true. I was about to say
That
if
is
you
100% true.
Wait a minute. If you take away all sales tax, you think that wouldn't have a more significant hit than the number of billionaires that pay in the income tax?
If you look specifically at sales taxes, I mean, in terms of overall percentage, maybe, but
That's
when we
what
look at
that's what he was
no,
saying.
no. We're saying when total tax burden, the total percentage of somebody's money that they come in, whether it paid through income taxes or sales taxes or anything else, right?
No, we were talking about burden.
We have a progressive tax system in America. The richest people pay more, right?
Yeah, but I don't think that's what LSTP was saying. I think he was just talking about total tax revenue.
No,
not
the point that Rob was making was that why do you think that these higher income earning people should be able to take SALT reductions or when you don't believe and then the response was, well, they make more money, they should be able to take some of those offsets. But
again, in principle, I do think so. Because I believe that if someone has to pay higher taxes to live in New York City or to live in California or to live in one of these higher producing states, I believe that this is something. I mean, I guess if you want to say like market forces would figure it out, I do believe that that's not the thing that's keeping people from living in certain places. Yes, we've seen this more recent flow of people to Texas, but I think that's like a new phenomenon. I don't know if this is going to be the long term thing. I think that California, New York City, like I said, Chicago. I think these cities are still growing.
15 years. So I don't think it's a flash in a pan.
I mean, if we look at the most populated,
wait. I don't know how that's relevant to the argument.
I'm saying that I'm arguing that it probably is still a moral shortcoming. I'm saying even if you didn't have SALT deductions, I think that people would still live in these places. I don't think they need to SALT deductions.
But that's not responsible. What I'm trying to say, if I can say it in my own words, is as follows. If LSP's argument is, look, when it comes to the SALT reductions, these states are paying, quote, more than their fair share, so we shouldn't really make a big deal out of them shirking their obligation.
They're being double
taxed.
They're paying two taxes.
My argument is, why wouldn't that same logic apply to billionaires? The top 1% are paying something like 40% of the total tax burden. So wouldn't that mean that they're paying more than their fair share? Therefore, we shouldn't criticize them for shirking their obligations?
No. One, people who are super rich, super wealthy, are already benefiting from our system far and beyond what any other normal person is, right? I think something like 80% of the wealth in this country is owned by like the top 5% of income earners. It's something insane like that. But
I mean, 46% of Americans don't pay taxes, so
yes, that's how bad they got it. That's how bad they got it. They don't have jobs.
Lifestyle.
Right? They don't have jobs, or they don't earn enough that they pay taxes. Something to that effect. And then to point number two, the taxes serve different purposes. So a SALT cap, right, is designed to help alleviate Americans who are kind of double taxed. And we're not talking about wealthy Americans who can easily just pay this extra in taxes. It actually kind of hurts. And it often goes to the benefit of states that don't even have an income tax themselves to pay for their own services.
Can I address this though? But
sure.
One, they do tend to come from states that on average actually are states that are have wealthier people. Second, it's only going to make sense for people that could get a refund and are paying into taxes, which by its very nature are people that are wealthier than like the bottom 50%. And third, even if we accept that these aren't wealthy people that are clamoring for the SALT tax reductions, certainly that's not true on the aggregate, but even
you're not arguing that it's only wealthy people getting SALT reductions, are you?
I'm not saying it's only wealthy people. I'm saying it's disproportionately wealthy people, and on average, these people are paying in, which makes them wealthier than like 50% of the bottom of the country that's paying very little taxes. But the third argument, which is most important here, is but they're already getting something for their taxes. You already acknowledged it, that their state systems are better. So they're getting a state benefit from the taxes they pay in. Sure, they have to pay in more, but they're getting all those sweet state programs in those Democrat states that you say are doing great.
Yeah,
so again, it's the same logic. You can't get away from this logic, which is you say, well, we shouldn't make a big deal of them shirking their obligation because, they're already paying in more than their fair share. My argument is the same could be made of billionaires, and you don't really have a good reason to differentiate other than
I gave you
the
two.
Billionaires already have a system that benefits them. The same
with
is true for
different
people
purposes.
that live in the states with SALT reductions.
If you get rid of SALT deductions, all you're doing is raising taxes on people in blue states. If you get rid of taxes on the wealthiest 1%, you're not providing a net benefit to the rest of society. You're making the wealthiest people richer. They serve different purposes.
But wait, if we get rid of the salt
Raising
tax
taxes in blue
deduction,
states may
yes
cause
or
some
no?
redistribution.
Yes or no? If we got rid of the salt tax deduction, would that not lead to an increase of federal revenue from taxes?
Yep.
And would that not benefit the rest of the country?
It could.
Okay, so same logic here. The idea that it's red or blue states irrelevant, right? That's not.
It also hurt people in the country. Tax policies are more complicated than that. It's not just an on-off switch. You need to be narrow, direct, and focused. Salt deductions are designed to address double taxation.
No, it's not what it's designed to do. Yes or no? Do you think that the people in Democrats?
Wait, what's it designed to do if it's not designed to do that?
Let me extrapolate exactly what I mean by it, right? What it's designed to do is mean that people could pay taxes that benefit themselves more locally than federally. They could shirk their federal obligations, in your language, at the behest of helping their domestic obligations, right? My question to you is, do you think that these Democrat states that pay more in, that want the SALT reductions, are getting more tax programs that benefit them?
No, they're getting less.
They get less. True. They're getting more at the state level.
You think California gets? I'm sorry. Okay, you're saying California gets more state level programs?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Right, and so they're buying something with their taxes in effect, in your parlance, right?
Yes,
they pay more in taxes, but they're getting more programs, right?
Yes.
So they get more state programs than, say, West Virginia, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so then why do they deserve a federal tax break?
I already told you, net benefit to everybody else versus net benefit to just a few people. Salt deductions benefit middle and upper class. Every time I explain the same answer to you, you say, wait a minute, interrupt, and then try to ask the same question again. It benefits middle and upper class families, right, in states where they're already being double taxed, versus a tax cut for billionaires only helps the top 1% of people and provides no societal net benefit.
Well, this can provide societal net benefit.
It's not just about income. It's about
Rob's making a lefty argument right now.
You can keep arguing this, Rob. I'm going to give you the same answer. I've given you two answers. You haven't addressed them either way.
Your answer is factually
that they serve different purposes. That is a factually true statement. They both serve different purposes.
It is not, because what you're leaving out is on one hand, you're talking about a benefit people get, not just their income, but also programs at the state level. Then on the other hand, when we're talking about okay, so it'd be the equivalent of this. I buy a car and spend a lot of money, so I get the car, right? I might have less money. I might have $15,000 less now, but I got that car, which is I got something in return for the money. In this case, you're saying that these people at the state level are paying for these state programs, and they're getting the benefit of those state programs. But then you're
just something you should want, because it alleviates pressure from the federal government.
Please, let me finish. And then, what happens is, when you're like, okay, fair enough, they're getting a bang for their buck, but they still have these federal obligations, and you're like, no, that's a double tax. But that's irrelevant. Just in the same sense, what you can't get away is you're just making arbitrary distinctions that aren't material to what we're talking about. When you say billionaires, it's only 1%. Okay, then if it's only 1% of people that want SALT reductions, would you admit then we should dispense of them and it's greedy because it's only 1%?
You wanted billionaires. My interest in this was in fact, what Grid was arguing in the beginning, which is supporting state rights, right? States have rights. States have rights to support their own programs, fund their own programs, all that jazz. And I'm immensely supportive of states' rights. I don't mind people paying taxes to the federal government. I don't mind California doing that. I don't mind California having their own program to stop the federal government from having to subsidize California every time they have some sort of a disaster. There's a lot of successful benefits you get from SALT deductions in these specific states that you don't get when you get tax cuts to billionaires. You are the one who brought up the tax cuts for the wealthiest 1%, and I'm telling you they're not the same for that reason.
Well, I mean, let's
no
be
two
honest.
things are ever exactly the same. What I'm saying is, if the logic is these people already pay their fair share, billionaires pay more of a fair share than the majority of people that are asking for SALT reductions, but you don't give them the same logic. And it seems like the distinction
because tax cuts for billionaires doesn't have a net benefit to society. No, it's because tax cuts for benefit
billionaire term around. I think that's very interesting, because I'm in the top 1% income bracket, and I'm not a billionaire.
Yeah,
Daddy Warbucks, flex that.
All that means is that we don't have
Grid one racks.
We don't have to go far into that. All that means we don't have a properly disambiguated tax system where people who make over 250,000,
800,000.
No, not 800,000.
$400,000.
Yeah, it's like 396. I think 400,000.
Yeah. Right. They are included in the same tax bracket as billionaires. I would not include you in that. In fact, I've had this conversation many times before. Doobie, for instance, he's a multimillionaire, right? But even
Doobie is?
Yeah, Doobie's a multimillionaire. But anyway, he should not be included in the same tax bracket as Jeff Bezos, right? We should have many different tax brackets for people in the upper income spectrum, and that's a problem, right? Like you, our friend Grid, should not be taxed the same way as Jeff Bezos. Clearly not. That's unfair. But I've been trying to think about this question, Rob, and if you could be a bit gracious here. I don't have a well thought out answer to this. I've never thought of the SALT deductions, right? We never discussed that here before, so I'm just like coming up, like thinking about this on the fly. So I do apologize if this comes out badly. A dollar in a state coffer is not the same as a dollar in the federal coffer, right? Like these things do these budgets do different things. The federal budget is good for, well, can be good. Depends on what we actually spend it on. It depends on what the Congress actually decides to spend it on. Obviously, these are all quite dependent, right? But the federal budget has the capability, due to its scale and its ability to, operate across the nation, where a state budget can operate only within that state, can be far more useful for a national type of response, right? Like it can do things on a national scale, that $1 that can't be done on a state scale. But at the same time, especially when we're talking about these states, it does not necessarily have to be a blue state, right? But a state that has a lot of economic activity, that is a donor state. Not all donor states are blue states, but are donor states. Within that state budget, it could be used to use programs that benefit that state and increase their GDP, right? Like either like fix the roads or create new infrastructure in terms of the internet that increase the ability of that economy to be more efficient and output more. Right? But these are two different things, right? A national response, for instance, national defense, is a different thing than increasing the infrastructure within this particular locality. They aren't the same thing. So even if I give one, if a dollar ends up in one place or another, they don't end up the same. There's a balance between how much do we want to go from one place to another, what we should ask from individuals. I don't know what that balance is. It might make sense, depending on what is being asked of the citizens of a locality, to pay less in federal because their state is taking care of some issues for them, right? But states can't do everything. States can't respond to all things. They having like, for instance, national defense. States can't do that, right? They can't operate a military like the skill that we have on the federal level. So we still need to pay into that. So like finding that exact balance, I think, is something to debate on, but I don't know if it's like necessarily shirking obligations. It's just deciding which where that money is more effectively placed.
Can I add to that real quick?
Was that
just real quick? Just a sentence. Yeah, just one thing to add to your analysis, Prime. The collective of the United States all contribute to global warming, and it's one of these things that makes hurricanes, flood, and all that monumentally worse. So even though it's localized to one area, we're all contributing to the environment that makes it worse.
Okay, if I could respond to this, if I could respond, you're basically making the argument for me, right? Which is that the federal taxes are doing something different than the state taxes are doing by and large. And so if an individual state decides they want to have an 80% sales tax, hypothetically, or a 60% income tax, why should that shirk their responsibilities of what they deserve to pay in federally if it's true that the federal taxes are going for something completely different? As a state, they have the right to decide as a state to how to tax their own people through state legislation. No problem. We all agree with that. But if we say there are certain obligations that each individual that's a citizen of this country must make when it comes to paying federal taxes, and we set that by some sort of percentage, we have a progressive tax bracket, how much you make, etc., then why should it be the case that certain people, because they're paying more into the state and getting more benefits out of these state programs, then be allowed to pay less into this national pool? And the only difference I'm getting from LSP here is, well, because tax breaks for billionaires and saying that they shouldn't be with their obligation, it doesn't benefit anyone. Of course, there's all sorts of reasons we could say the tax cuts for the wealthiest Americans would benefit people. It also ignores the fact that the sort of tax cuts we're talking about tended to put more money in everyone's pocket, even working class people. And so that's certainly true as well. But I did a little research here real quick. Would it surprise you to know when it comes to salt reductions, what percentage of people in the low income bracket do you think claim salt reductions, LSP?
Oh, it's probably not a lot because they're low income.
Less than 1%. Would it surprise you?
No shit.
Would it surprise you?
What percentage do homeless people pay?
Let me finish. So the people that are claiming salt reductions, people that make over $250,000 a year, they claim between 70 and 90% of the salt reductions. So in effect, this is a tax cut for the very wealthy. That's what the salt reductions. And the only reason you hesitate to put a moral claim or a criticize their obligations is because you know it's in blue states. And it doesn't fit into your bullshit dichotomy that you outlined in your opening statement that the Democrats, the left-leaning people, they're very much concerned and they want to help people. It's those evil, dastardly right-wingers and Republicans that refuse to do it. And yet, tooth and nail, we see Democrat states saying, we don't want to pay into FEMA. Our rich people don't want to be double taxed. 90%
so the reason
of salt reductions are for the very wealthy.
Yeah, so the reason I don't like putting a morality play on something like tax policy, I'm not even sure I like the word obligation, but I'll use that word since that's the word you want to use, right? Is that
you used that word earlier too?
Well, I used it because it was the replacement word Rob used, right? I forgot what I was going to say.
Word would you use?
I got derailed by something. Hang on. The reason I want to say it's a moral obligation is because it's a matter of policy, right? If you could conceivably fund the United States and give everybody everything they need and everything's perfect and you do it with zero taxes, fuck yeah, let's do that. And if you have a need for something else in the state and you got to raise taxes for everybody to like 50%, then fucking do that. But the state's got obligations it's got to meet to us, the American people, to we, the American people. And as Prime was pointing out earlier, the distribution of resources between states and the federal government are holistically different. The skill deficit between what state governments themselves can do versus the federal government when it comes to disaster relief is something, again, that the federal government excels at. I haven't heard a response once to this about how it's saving anybody money, but there was the $150 billion BRIC program cut. That's just going to cost us more money, right? If this was really about saving money, I'm not convinced, you know. And the salt expansions, the getting rid of the salt deduction, I'm not sure actually contributes to us saving anything when you're cutting everything else here that's going to lead to more. Like, I think if you looked at how much income was coming in from the salt deductions or how much income was lost from the salt deductions, is there any way it equals 150 billion? Like, that seems monumental.
I don't know. Your estimate, though, of a bunch of people that also made a bunch of bullshit estimates on Trump's original tax cut policy of what a disaster it would be for the economy that were proven wrong. Actually, tax revenues went up after the tax cut policy, even though we were told it would be the exact opposite. We constantly see these think tanks that say, trust us, bro, Trump's economy is going to be a disaster. And yet the policies that they endorsed under the Biden economy was the actual disaster. And we saw real wage growth decline.
But there was a massive tax increase.
I don't know what that is addressing.
But, like,
yeah.
I don't like there was a massive tax increase because of the tariffs, though. That's a separate thing.
But what I'm suggesting is that you also have as an estimate. You have an estimate that because we cut this spending with the BRIC spending, that's going to lead to paying $150 billion more a year. That is an estimate. We shall see when it comes to the end of Trump's term whether or not that cost more money than it saved. I guess we'll see when it comes to that. I'm just saying I don't trust your estimate at face value, just like they said all of this stuff about the original tax cuts.
That's fine. You don't have to trust the estimate. It's not coming from me.
I fully acknowledge you're probably hearing that from some think tank or some group. Sure. Okay.
That's good.
But the point I'm trying to make is when we talk about the fundamental, there are things that the federal government does. And so we're obligated to pay into the federal government because there are certain obligations as people we should all come together, such as disaster relief. And the federal government does that better than state governments, etc., which is why we need to put this money into an organization like FEMA. I'm saying if that's the case, then the salt reductions would be the shirking of obligations, because just saying, no, trust us, bro, we're paying more into the state, so we should have to pay less per capita to FEMA is nonsensical. It's primarily benefiting the wealthy, etc., in these Democrat states. And I think that you have a double standard here, because as soon as we say, okay, but if it's about paying, quote, your share, Well, we could see billionaires pay more than their share. And your argument's like, yeah, but those tax cuts only benefit sort of.
I feel like I've addressed this directly. Prime, I'm having deja vu. Did I not address this directly?
You have not. What you've done is you've made distinctions without merit. You've made distinctions that aren't warranted. Why that shirking of obligations has been made, and then you constantly contradict yourself, as is Prime case. When you talk about the need to have separate pools of money and how these federal monies are spent differently, and these are certain obligations. Again, then
wait
why
should
all your argument is we should more efficiently spend money? No fucking shit.
I didn't contradict anything. I never said whether the salt taxes are a good thing or a bad thing. Like I said, like this is just
I'm saying LSP, by citing your claim, is contradicting his claim because what it shows is like it's two separate pools of money. There is a necessity for the federal pools, and then there's a necessity for the state pool. And my argument is, if you're paying more into the state pool, that shouldn't shirk your obligation to paying into this federal pool.
Yeah, I feel like we're just rehashing this because I moved on to the BRICS program and how cutting that cost $150 billion. And now we're saying I didn't respond to something I already responded to. So I can respond to this for like the fourth or fifth time. And I'll just say that once again, there's two different things with two different obligations that benefit two different entities. That's why I have different standards here. You might not like those standards, but that's an explanation. You don't have to be satisfied with that explanation, but this is the fifth time I've given it, and I really need you to follow along with me this time.
We do have to move on. We do have to move on. We have a little bit of time left.
I'll say it real quick. That explanation says nothing. You might as well have said hashtag it's different. When Democrats do it, it's different.
I'm sorry, Rob, your policy was we should spend money better. Move on. Okay, thanks.
Sure. Okay, let's, because I feel like other people might have other things left. Bam. You might be talking to a lady. I'm not sure. I want to hear, because I feel like you had something to say. If you're talking to a lady right now, don't let me get in the way of getting your dick wet.
He was better, Prime.
He was in chatting with lady mode. He was kicked back with the headphones looking all cool and shit. Were you on FaceTime?
I mean, if he's working on getting laid, then I don't want to interrupt that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. I got a game like that. But no, what I was trying to throw into the mix is like what Rob. It's kind of weird seeing it. Like, I guess we never got to get to the fight that Rob wanted to have, because I'm pretty sure Rob was making not a facetious argument. I'm pretty sure Rob, like I said, what Rob was making was the common Democrat point. Like what you pay into your state, well, like that's a benefit. That's a benefit. You receive the benefits for it. It is true that just because you do these things doesn't remove your federal obligation, your federal tax obligation. Like if these taxes alone is enough to move people to different states, then it's probably a good thing. We probably need to resettle people around different portions of the country based on like benefits versus tax burden versus a bunch of other factors like going in. Like I said, I don't think that SALT deductions are going to be enough to like not have New York City be one of the most productive capitalistic cities in the United States of America.
That's true, but you could say the same thing about tax cuts to the wealthy, right? If we give if we pass the tax cuts to the BBB, right? There's still the 1% still going to pay the vast majority of taxes. Sure. The tax revenue will probably go up.
But I don't think the 1% are complaining about property taxes. I don't like the reason we have a progressive tax system in the first place is simply because it's not just about what percentage are you paying. It's about what lifestyle impact this has on you. Someone making $15,000 a year, if they pay $5,000 in taxes, I know this would be crazy. I mean, obviously, at $15,000, they're like not paying anything in taxes. But if they were paying like a blanket $5,000 in taxes, they're going to have a massive impact on lifestyle. Versus if someone's making $500,000 a year, even paying $50,000 in taxes isn't going to have the same impact on basic lifestyle. Because after a certain amount, we all understand that there's only the way human beings consume is going to change only so much within a certain range.
But again, I think that is a separate question, right? To the idea of how much it affects your lifestyle. I think that like people like me and Lactoid and probably Grid are going to say that it shouldn't be the role of the federal government to punish people based on how productive they are and say you don't deserve X amount of lifestyle because you've been so productive. The point I'm trying to make is that's in direct response to you saying, well, the SALT tax reduction won't eliminate the productivity of the states that have the SALT tax reductions. That may be true, but by the same token, right, if it's true, and this is what you can't get around, like you're like, yeah, but they'll still live lavish lifestyles with the the tax reduction under Trump. But again, the SALT reduction is very similar. It's primarily affecting people that make over $250,000 a year. So it's not like, it's almost like what we're led to believe is, well, when Democrats do, in effect, which is the same type of policy, which is, look, we want to shirk the federal tax burden from our citizens of our states. Those policies are primarily for what we would consider the rich, people making over $250,000 a year. So again, I don't understand. It's like on one hand, when we look at Trump's tax cuts, we have to ignore that it benefits damn near everyone that pays taxes, including people in my income bracket, and just assume it's just for the billionaires and there's no benefit. But when it comes to the SALT reductions, which in effect are the exact same type of tax breaks, it's just to people that live in these Democrat states, all of a sudden it's like, well, that's not the same. It's not, they're sort of benefit. And I don't understand the moral difference when it comes to our obligations to the federal government.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with you on that. Like I said, I do think it is. I do think it is a place. Now, if I had to give the best faith argument of it, they're arguing that we're taking care of, or like the states going ahead and taking care of some of these things, so the federal government doesn't have to spend money there. Like if we provide our own socialized health care, we don't like the government. That's one less percentages that the government has to pay towards people's socialized health care. So just give us that money to do it on a more local level. I think that's the best faith argument of it. But again, I don't think I'm.
But
I think
even
I'm
if you use that argument, the only issue is one. Okay. So let me ignore the rest of this. I'll just comment on that. Even if you use that argument, still, states can only handle so much, right? Some states might be in a position to have like socialized healthcare. And others aren't, right? Because maybe their populations are too small for that, or whatever. Or some states may be in a position to increase their their energy infrastructure, and others aren't. And so while yes, New York might be in a position to do these things, maybe Oregon, or not even Oregon, like Wyoming, Montana can't, because their population is simply too small. Their tax base, or state tax base, is just far too small to do that. That's why we wouldn't leave these things alone to the states, leave them to languish, because some states will prosper and others won't. And are you guys okay?
If I can't I'll just say this real quick.
They just say you did that like 10%.
It's not just attacking LSP, which I think that's how this came out, like sort of the obligation type argument, and conservatives are bad and Democrats are good. It's directly attacking that. But when I read your topic here, right, it says, under Trump, there's been a massive underappreciated downsize of federal government. Functions are being moved to the states. This is a very interesting. As soon as I read that, I was like, SALT tax is what I thought of, because what this argument does, the SALT tax is actually, if we were talking about this sitting around the bar, me, Grit, and Lactoid would be like, fuck yeah, give them a SALT reduction. Actually, we think less taxes are good. People do deserve a tax break. And the Democrats would be the people like, no, tax cuts are bad. So this flips it on its head, because this is just, in effect, Democrat states arguing for tax cuts. We should pay less money to the federal tax. That's what's happening.
So I don't know if people on the left here, right, these individuals have to take a position on this. Now, two people did take a position on it, right, on whether SALT taxes are good or not. But I don't support the Democratic Party. I'm on the left, right, but the Democratic Party does not represent my interests. Right, I'm too far left for the Democratic Party. I'm outside of their mainstream, right, and what they provide.
Just say you're a dirty commie.
So, I'm not a dirty commie, but I'm a socialist, right? And anyway, they don't represent me, right? So when you're talking about these state and local taxes, right, and them benefiting the rich, that sounds about right, because Democrats do that all the fucking time. That's not incongruous, right? Democrats are usually saying, well, we want to increase the tax. Democrats, like the party, the Democratic Party, not talking about the base, but the party, right, serves the rich all the fucking time. They make noises like they care about the worker, but they don't, right? In their actions, they'll do what you just said, Rob. Now, again, you know more about the situation than I do, and I apologize coming into this with a certain level of ignorance, but I believe you, Rob, if you tell me that this is a policy that the Democratic Party has fought for that benefits the rich, because they do that all the time, right? So like whatever, right? But we as individuals don't necessarily have to be held to account for what those greedy, awful Democratic politicians do necessarily.
Well, the Republicans are the ones who increased the salt cap to $40,000 up until I think 2030. So like, I don't even think it's like necessarily a partisan issue. It's just people from wealthy states.
It's primarily benefits Democrat. The SALT deductions primarily benefit Democrat states.
Oh, that's because
Certainly
Democrat states are wealthier. But the Republicans in those states want them too.
But it's not just, but think of how it would work. It would also be states with a higher tax burden, which are going to tend to be Democrat states as well, right? If you live in a state with a very low tax burden, then the SALT reduction wouldn't help you as much because you're paying less in state taxes, which means you have less to deduct. So it is people that tend to be wealthier and people that tend to live in states with a higher state tax burden, which are going to be primarily Democrat.
No, I won't disagree that it's primarily Democrat states, but I'm just saying that like the New York, I think the New York senator or whatever, like from the Republican, he was the one. He was like, it was that was his deal breaker on the big beautiful bill.
We talked about the SALT tax, unfortunately, for a long time.
Can I ask
every now and then just have a good salt tax combo?
No, sorry, I
have a question that's not salt tax related. If I
I wanted to ask
that all right with
stuff, but okay, sure.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Oh, it was for the righties on this panel. I just wanted to get their insights onto Trump's cutting of cancer research and PEPFAR stuff like that.
Okay, how much did
$36 trillion in debt?
How much did he
I
cut?
don't know. Let me go look.
And a lot of this research went specifically to like universities such as like Harvard Medical. Am I correct? I just want to make sure.
I get a lot of research there. Yeah.
Okay.
It says it cut research grants by 15%.
Okay. So do we have
more than $1 billion
more than $1 billion? Okay. And that research primarily is through sort of medical universities.
Yeah, most.
I don't know where it exactly is.
Research is going to be through our university system. This is where we put it at.
Yeah, I think that we should stop funding.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's $6 billion. $6 billion.
$6 billion. Okay. I think that we should stop funding radical institutions that are training their students to hate my way of life. And if this research is so important, then they could dip into their endowments and solve cancer.
Wait a minute. No, we're not funding.
So we don't fund cancer because people on colleges have bad opinions?
Okay, so let's say that we took that money and instead sent it all to let me finish. Let's say we took that money and instead we sent it all to Liberty University and we sent it all to Hillsdale, two Republican universities. Would you be okay with that? And then we said, "Oh, you want to cut that?"
Depends on what they're doing. Are they researching cancer?
Yeah, if they had the infrastructure and they were doing the research, that would be fine. But like we placed this like it's not we're paying.
I care more about saving people from cancer.
Okay, well, these universities certainly have the money within their endowments to save people from cancer. Why won't they? And it's the same argument we hear when it comes to HIV. Like we're told over and over. I can't remember the absurd low estimates, but for 100, let me finish real quick. For $150 million.
I just want to add a note. Endowments. I don't think endowments you can spend willy nilly. I do not believe it works like that. Of like
there's certainly you're right that it's not as easy as just pulling the money in out and spending it, but there's certainly process that you could use to transfer.
Honest to say that they have endowments, they could just cure cancer with that.
They could certainly use the money they have there and prioritize it differently to spend it on cancer research that they're doing at these universities. The same's true when we hear all these estimates. Did you know that like 40 million people are going to die because we stopped sort of sending money to these African countries for AIDS, and it was only $200 million. Okay, then donate the money, but no one will. Because two things is true at the same time. One, everyone's generous with other people's money, not their own money. And secondly, the numbers are bullshit. The vast majority of that money was not going to African countries to solve AIDS. It is hyperinflated how many people will die of AIDS. And it's the same true when it comes to all of these other spendings. What we're constantly told through organizations like USAID and all these other organizations that we as conservatives have to fund through our tax dollars institutions that fundamentally hate us and put out a bunch of bullshit with the majority of their money and spending that is antithetical to our way of life. And when we say, okay, we want to stop funding that, then you all say, oh, you don't care about cancer? You don't care about AIDS? No, go fuck yourself. Fund it yourself if you want.
Do you think cancer research is antithetical to your way of life?
No, I think that the institution, let's say that the best cancer researcher in the country was a KKK member, right? And he's constantly out there and the money's fungible. So because you're sending him all this money, he's able to have
We work with Nazis to send rockets to space, by the way.
Whatever your point means. He's able to go out there because money's fungible, and now he doesn't have to spend his own money on cancer research. He can hold all these Klan rallies. You would say, cool, keep sending him the money, right?
No, not for Klan rallies, but again,
Yeah.
like cancer research is specific. Like
wait a minute. I'm not even going to bite that bullet though. Like if he writes a grant and a grant is approved and it's actually like for cancer research, like I don't really.
Yeah, like if you're using.
No, he's using it for Klan rally funds. I'm saying that like I think there has to be
but you can't accept this part of his hypothetical.
Yeah.
Now he's saying
sure, I'm not accepting that part of his hypothetical. I'm saying that there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how cancer research works in the United States. The United States has made we're not giving universities money as this is to propagandize children. The United States doesn't have any the United States doesn't have anywhere else to fund cancer research. We've placed this burden, this responsibility in the hands of our universities. It's where they're providing a service. Because there's no one else to do it.
Yeah. I have no interest in giving obscenely wealthy universities made up of the top 1%.
We're not giving them something.
There. Yeah. I have no interest in giving them money which is fungible so that they can keep using their own.
That's why you have to deal with that first part. He misses the fund. He doesn't think we're giving them money. He doesn't think there's actually a service being provided. He doesn't understand that there's nowhere else to put this money towards.
First of all, I agree. I agree with you. There was a service being provided. There's nowhere else that has the infrastructure of our university system, like no other institution that has the capability of our university system. To
not just cancer; it's all medical research.
So much of our research, all of it, almost all of it happens through our university system. We'd have to create an entirely new infrastructure, right? An entirely new paradigm to actually handle that. But that's okay, right? And then beyond that,
you're missing his point.
Hold on. No, I'm not missing his point. I'm not going to hold on. I'm trying to get this point out. Then you have to accept that money is fungible. So money that's been given for a specific purpose, like our friend Corey called out, right, is now also that might be used for Klan rallies. That might be a thing that might happen, right? Or in his to Rob's point, it might be used for anti-conservative talking points rather than actually the work done. So yes, you have to accept that point. No, I didn't accept that part of his.
You don't think money's fungible?
I think we have very strict accounting practices specifically.
No, you're missing the point.
Exactly.
You're missing.
I'm not. I don't.
I promise you are.
Hold on. One second. No, hold on. I'm saying I don't care about his point. 1 second. And then finally,
right,
one second. I like to it. Right. So what's it? So. Fuck, man, you're talking, and I forgot the point that I'm trying to make here. I'm I have a larger point that I'm getting to. Fuck.
Fund our radical lefty institutions, or else you don't care about cancer.
That's the
just say that. It's way easier. He doesn't care about cancer. He doesn't care about kids dying. Just say that. It's way easier.
Right? Is that it's so strange? It's so strange. It's so strange, this formulation that these elite universities are simply outputting outputting all these individuals who are adverse to Rob Noor and the conservative way of life, right? When our upper class, our politicians, all of them, right, including those Republicans, right? Republicans who like to rail against those elite universities, like Ted Cruz, right? All of them went to those elite universities. All of them sometimes have multiple degrees at those elite universities. They come from this system, but it implies that they're brainwashing them, their leftism, and all. And the only thing that comes out is radicalism. And I put some words into your mouth, so I do.
Then college kids are probably more liberal than
there. But
I
was asked a question. Can I answer?
Let me real quick. No, I'm not saying every single person. The universities are obviously radical left. That's indisputable. And the other thing with fungibility, I guess I'll just put it to you this way. I'll tell you a little story. I had this friend one time that had a kid that I used to drink with a lot. And when he had this kid, we stopped drinking. So he asked me one day, he calls me, he says, "Hey, can I borrow $150 to get diapers?" I said, "Sure." He says, "Can you come pick me up?" I said, "Okay." I go pick him up.
One analogy for sure with government grants. 100%.
Right. I'll finish my point. We go to pick up. I go to pick up this person. I'm about to take him. He says, "Can you swing off to the bar?" He buys $150 worth of weed. And I'm like, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Oh, don't worry. Those wasn't your dollars. Those were my dollars. Now let's go buy the diapers." And I said, "Yes, but if I didn't give you the $150 for diapers, you would have had to spend your $150 on diapers, and then you couldn't have afforded weed." That's fungibility.
My guy,
sure.
They aren't subject to university accounting practices for government money. right? They aren't handing them
think
a
you're
bag of
understanding me.
cash. They aren't handing them a bag of cash to do whatever they want with, right? You specifically said in your hypothetical that you presented, right, is that, hey, top cancer research, you provide them a grant, and then that grant money ends up going to the KK. Okay. Oh, because because he doesn't. No. Because I remember. I remember because he doesn't have to use his own money. Because he doesn't have to use his own money for that, and that means fungible. That's ridiculous. He's doing a work, a job, right? A job, which is cancer research. That's where that money is going to. What he does through on his own makes no difference, right? There have been plenty of racists who have made big research discoveries, and I wouldn't take that money back because that might have also gone right to do racial animus, like that fucking guy who was one of the ones who mapped the human genome, right? Like one of those guys who did that is a huge racist, like huge fucking racist. Whatever, right? Doesn't matter that because some public money went to his hands, that he now his own money is freed up to do something.
They destroyed him, by the way.
I don't care.
But the point that you're missing, y'all are treating medical research like it's a volunteer work, or like these universities are asking the government to give them money. Please help us with and it's really the opposite way around. The United States government is begging these universities to invest in the research. They're providing a service. It's an actual job that there doesn't exist any alternative to do.
So Ika Rich had a message.
Two arguments. The first, that he fundamentally misunderstands fungibility. Then he says fungibility doesn't matter. That's the discrepancy. You're making two arguments. You're misunderstanding fungibility and saying, oh no, there's a direct accounting of all the money. Right. Like in my example, there was a direct accounting that those specific dollars went to diapers. It's just that money was freed up elsewise. Then you say, oh, okay, but I don't care about the fungibility of it. I disagree. I hope you all get your dream. I hope that
do you believe those schools could pay for their own research?
Yes.
Well, again, so that's the dumb part. Let's stop there. Let's only talk about that. Why would they pay for their own research when the government is begging? They're not doing this for fun. They're not doing it because they want to. It's not a passion. No, the government pays them to care about cancer.
So just to be clear, all of these people don't give a shit about cancer.
No, it's a service. It's a job. No, they're not doing it for funsies.
Okay, well then,
all right. We should just cut funding for cancer research because students have bad opinions.
No, we should cut funding for cancer research because people like you know that the vast majority of this money is being spent on waste.
There you go.
And it's actually
I'm sorry. You should cut funding for cancer research because people like me know the money's going to waste. There you go. There you go. We don't cut no money for cancer research. People like me know better.
I don't give a shit.
Just go with our personal stuff later. Let's not move away from what I'm saying. Again, I'm saying you're not. I'm saying that the argument stuff. I don't care about the petty stuff. I'm saying that when all of you in here who disagree just believe that these universities are just asking for government handouts to fund this research, and it's not actually a necessary part of our government. That's I don't understand what
I'm telling you is I don't believe you that it's exactly as you say, that the university is like, we don't even want to fund cancer. We don't want to. We want to go play racquetball and shit. Oh, but the government
it's not a charity. It's a service. It's a job.
Would you listen to me? So you're making it seem as if they're like, we don't want to do this shit, and the government's coming and going.
No, it's not what he's saying. Nobody's saying it.
No one's saying that.
No one said that at all.
No one's saying that.
Two super chats.
I was literally listening. I haven't said a word in 45 minutes. No one was saying that.
Okay. 2 super chats. The concept of from Alexander went $20. The concept of insurance is simple. Everyone pays in so that you can take. Sorry, my God, my fucking YouTube is freaking out on me. The concept of insurance is simple. Everyone pays in so that when you take unexpected harm that can't be covered by yourself, someone has the money to come in and make it right. If you want every state out for themselves, then okay. And then $2 from Ika Rich. Says, name the most successful right-wing cancer centers. I guess cancer research centers is what he means. So are there, to Rob, to anyone, right?
Cancer centers where you go to get the cancer.
Cancer centers are going to get cancer. Yeah, cancer research centers. Are there?
Are they right? Are they left wing or right wing? It's weird to frame them, but because they're connected to universities that happen to have political deal with politics. But these cancer research are their own entities. That's what
that's their frame, hon. But that's their framing. We can use their framing, right? So, Rob, are there? And I'm not asking you this not facetiously, right? Are there preferred places that you would like these cancer dollars to go to? Ones that line up with your values specifically.
That has
Sure, ones that wouldn't be in Ivy League universities that are racist in their admissions practices against Asian Americans, white Americans, and who do not turn out so much curriculum
They're the
and
best at
professors.
solving
So
that are
where
radical
would you?
left.
Okay, so yeah, but
they're the best at
specifically,
solving
you're saying where you
cancer.
won't.
Do not exist.
Where would you? Where would you send
Any
them?
place, any place that isn't doing that. Are you asking me for a specific name? Would you like me to Google a cancer research center? And then when I do, you in the chatter will say, "Fair enough."
Hold on. I'm not trying to. Hold on. You sound. I'm simply relating the super chat. But in any case, right? Like it sounded like you had an idea of what you wanted this system to look like. Maybe you didn't. Maybe you didn't. Hold on. You might not.
No, it's fair. You asked me for questions. Okay. The American Cancer Society, a nonprofit. The City of Hope, a top-ranked nonprofit. The Koch, the Koch brothers. They have an institution at MIT. I think we should send more money to the Koch brothers. You guys are cool with that, right? More.
Okay.
millions
No,
of
I
dollars.
am. If they're
all
doing cancer research,
of the money.
absolutely.
In fact, hold on. We should have the Koch brothers do all cancer research in the country.
Okay.
Yes.
We pay for everything.
Are they good at it?
If they're
You guys are
if
cool.
they're good
I
at
don't
it,
know.
then sure.
They're gonna find people who are good at
Well,
it.
how racist are they? Because there's a direct correlation to how good you are at cancer research to how racist you are as an institution. So, like, how racist are the Koch
Good
brothers?
point. Not
Let's go.
enough.
We have the
That's
Mayo
going to be a
Clinic,
problem.
Mount Sinai, the National Comprehensive Cancer Network.
Okay.
Right, those all seem
All
better
right.
than
Okay.
say,
Fair
Because I'm
enough.
saying
All right.
our
Those are names.
government officials disagree with this fundamentally. Like Condoleezza Rice is.
Before you do that, Grid has been waiting. So
Okay.
let's get Grid and
Yeah, I mean,
let's get Grid, Corey,
as far
and
as
then
cancer
bam.
research, I don't know
Bye, LSP.
at all. If once the cancer found will pay for it, and therefore any research into the cure should be privately funded, because there's absolutely zero chance that my tax dollars will result in a free cure. So fuck that.
What about a faster cure? It doesn't have to be free. What if it's
do
faster?
all the research.
What if we just get the cure faster, but it's not free? Like
I don't.
Like we kicked
why,
in.
Why do you want to pay for something that you are going to have to pay for again and again? Why
You don't think society has benefited from medical research?
Because if I get the cancer and they didn't research it,
I
and then
agree
they can't
that
cure it,
society's
it'd be like
benefited from
annoying
No,
to
for
have
public
cancer.
medical research. You think we do it for no reason?
Public
There's no
research?
benefit.
Which public research?
I'm pretty sure almost every medicine that comes out in the last 30, 40 years has came from
And
public
you guys
funding.
all bitch about how expensive medical is, and yet your tax dollars paid for it. It should be free.
It's not the medication itself is the problem. I'm glad that we have an advancements in medicine. Like I said, people may have issues with pricing, but I don't want to not make
right. Like the research is supposed to be like hella expensive on this stuff. Like the research is where the most of the money goes, I think.
What if just hypothetically say this occurred? Like say that a bunch of billionaires that you people don't like came together and they're like, look, the government needs to keep giving us money, et cetera, because we have all this great funding. And they put out research that says our funding's doing a lot of work, right? And you personally haven't audited it. Would you trust that to be like, yeah, we all need to pay more to these billionaires because it must be doing something good? Would you trust that?
I mean, if they were dropping medicine year after year, if they were dropping improvements in the field,
I think it's been shown that cancer research has improved results.
Okay, maybe it'll be improving under them.
Somebody invented something.
If it does, then it does, but that doesn't exist right now. Again, all we have is our university system, and that's why I was saying before. Condoleezza Rice is the most Republican person you can find, and even she came out and she said that I'm sorry that like you have issues with these universities, but we don't have another infrastructure. The United States has made a choice to place our medical research solely in the. I promise you. I promise you. Every one of those organizations you just named are tied to universities.
No, I bet they.
They may not be named, but where they do their research is going to be tied to universities.
I'm going to springboard off of BAM, okay? Because if I recall correctly, the first one that you mentioned is the American Cancer Society. Do you think the American Cancer Society has labs and they do direct research, or what do you think happens at the American Cancer Society? What do you think is more likely? You think that they just take money and then they funnel it to universities and other organizations that carry out cancer research? Or do you think the American Cancer Society, they have a team of scientists and they're in the lab doing cancer research? What do you think is the more likely scenario there?
I think that they probably are giving it to other facilities. I don't think all of those facilities are directly through Ivy League schools. And look, the point right? I answered your question directly, right?
I would say probably the majority of it is Ivy League school, or rather prestigious institutions.
I cannot stress this enough. Let me make the overarching point. I don't give a fuck about what you're saying here, any of you. Let me explain why. I'm tired of being told that we have to continue to fund shit that we know the majority of it's going to fraud, waste, and to things that are vehemently against what I want with our tax dollars to be spent. Because otherwise, cancer. Fuck you people. You should have done what you should have been doing was making sure that these universities weren't so disgusting for years and years. But you didn't give a shit because it benefited your political side, and so you're okay with it. Now go fuck yourselves. Simple.
Okay, that's nice. Lactoid, go ahead.
Bam, you said earlier that like, oh, the government has to come ask these universities to like do the research, right?
No, I'm saying I may have been being facetious. What I'm saying is this is the route pattern we go down. You know, the federal government has an interest in investing in medical research, and the place that you invest that into is our university system, who actually do that research.
Turn into a pumpkin.
You can just go if you want.
Supposed to be finished.
You just go. No, you can just go if you want. If you need to go, it's fine. Anyone, it's past 11:30.
I don't want you to think I'm rage quitting or anything.
No, certainly not. Go ahead, Lecter.
Yeah, you're a quitter. You're a loser.
Would you be okay with just like having the government just like forcing Harvard or forcing one of these Ivy Leagues to spend some of their endowment on cancer research?
I don't know about that.
What do you mean by forced?
It's like if you want to forced, like you have to do it. Like we can figure out some kind of leverage.
You have to
real quick.
I mean, are we going to write off? Is it going to be a tax write off or anything?
Yeah, like how's it working?
No. We just say like you have to spend a certain percentage of your endowment on cancer research, otherwise you don't qualify for FAFSA.
How do we enforce this?
Otherwise, you don't qualify for FAFSA.
Are you trying to say something?
Yeah, I just looked it up. I mean, it says that most, if not like a majority of any independent lab or whatever is either affiliated with a school is used through a university. That's where they do their research. Like it's majority through.
Yeah, university. I'm saying not Harvard Medical and places like that.
Okay,
MIT,
just
for example,
just the university in general. I'm just saying.
Okay, well then
I
that's
don't give a shit.
We will still have most schools. The vast majority aren't elite, and the vast.
Well, no, I want to answer my question though.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I mean, do you have an answer? Like, what would be wrong if you care about cancer and dying kids? Why not just start forcing Harvard to spend some of that $50 billion endowment? We can just say, hey, look, like you got to spend.
Is it specifically just Harvard, or I'm about to
your endowment's not supposed to go down. There's plenty of Ivy Leagues, so we can start taking.
No, but I'm saying, is this like just the Ivy League thing, or like
why would that be the case? Why would you?
How would you define this category? Would it be like if your endowment is over a certain amount?
Yeah.
You're required to spend a portion.
Sure.
Well, he's saying we're going to withhold FAFSA funds that Congress has appropriated.
I'm about to say that. Now, are we still going to have the same amount of money going towards this funding?
Now the issue you have is that Congress didn't allocate money for cancer. They allocated money to go to student tuition. So he's just saying, what if we got the government to just violate the law?
Hold on. The government can absolutely withhold FAFSA funding. For example, they violate Title IX. If the school's not in compliance with Title IX, you can withhold FAFSA funding. We can just make a rule, and I'll be fine with Congress doing it.
Is that in the law for FAFSA?
Hold on. We can have Congress do it. I don't care. Would you be opposed to a law saying, look, if your endowment is over this amount, you have to spend a certain percentage of that on cancer research. Like this is going to be Harvard, Yale, Cornell, all these places. You got to spend a certain percentage of your endowment.
What percentage?
If I could be shown that it improves results, sure.
Give a percentage.
5%.
5%. If you show me a 5% improves results,
it can't be 10 because it can't be 10 because the point of an endowment is like your endowment's not supposed to go down. It's supposed to be enough on its returns that like it funds things without decreasing the way endowments work.
No, because once they get low enough, once they lose enough money, then they're going to be below the threshold where they don't have to do that anymore, right? So they're not going to run out of money.
Progressive income tax.
Sure, not quite, but the same idea of like any of these Ivy Leagues with a big endowment, they're going to have they are going to eventually get down to some low. Everyone's going to have a very low endowment. Would you be opposed to this program?
I was about to say it wouldn't remove their government's responsibility in paying for it, but sure, they can participate as well.
What if it led to overall more cancer funding research than the current system, or the system that you guys are criticizing Trump?
Well, that wouldn't be the question. Does it lead to fewer cancer deaths? If it leads to fewer cancer deaths, then yeah, sure.
I don't think that would be a thing because I don't know
for 10%. Yeah, sure. I'd take that trade-off, wouldn't you?
I think 10% is in practicality probably way too high, like in a year over year. Just because the endowment is like the money they made all the time. That's not just this year's income. But I don't actually know how much the endowment is.
maybe they made the money, but we have to take that money for cancer research. So yeah.
No,
10%.
I'm just saying 10% isn't. Well, you wouldn't do this
He's
for.
saying not 10%
You
annually.
wouldn't do a 10% wealth tax, would you?
I think what he's saying is he's fine with the policy, just not the number.
No, I'm saying that Lactoid understands the economic issues with the 10% wealth
I
tax.
think this is
Like
a weird
you're over here taking
conversation.
10%.
This is a very weird conversation.
It is not a weird conversation. Lactoid has a point, which I see where he's.
He's not. He's not because
Yes,
he's
it does.
no.
Yes,
It's
it
a
does.
taxation point. Again, but I haven't disagreed. I haven't disagreed with the concept of taking the money for
What
like.
point you're trying to
What
make,
if we
I don't
get
get.
something different? Sure, we can do something different. But I'll say he also has to deal it within the economics of what's reality. If we if we tax Jeff Bezos, we're going to take 10% of your net worth each year. You would realize like, oh, okay, well that's not a sustainable model.
Wait, hold on. Why would that not be a sustainable model? Don't you care about kids with cancer?
What,
you know how many kids? Do you know how many kids we can save with? If we just take all of Jeff Bezos' money.
Yeah, but
you
if
know
the place stops existing,
no. He doesn't work for Amazon anymore. He doesn't work for. We don't need him.
Yeah, but he owns Amazon. So if his money goes away and he doesn't own Amazon, but then he can't make more money. Then when you're done with when you run out of that money.
No. We take his shares and then we
doing it because we didn't get the answer you thought you was going to get. Like you didn't. The gotcha didn't work. All of us was that we were fine with funding something different.
No. So the gotcha. So I did have to like up it to the Jeff Bezos thing in order to get the gotcha because I was underestimating like how Rob was talking about before. I was I guess underestimating how quickly you guys will look at a pool of money that's not yours and just say, yeah, I guess we could just take that.
Absolutely.
Like you're right. That is how you
watching. Pocket people's money is like
that was crazy. Lactoid, are you on the same page as Rob of we should stop funding Ivy League research institutions and cut cancer funding? You're on the same page as that.
Yeah. I mean,
we should be voluntarily because there's been no benefits to society from public medical research.
We could get way more benefit if we took all of Bezos's money and just gave it to the kids with cancer. Do you not care about kids? Do you not care about kids with cancer? Do you not care about kids with cancer? Do you know how many cancers we could save if we took all of Bezos' money? And Bill Gates, he doesn't do shit. Bill Gates doesn't do shit anymore.
We probably solve more cancer if we took no money and we did no research, right? If we just had people chilling and people didn't even know they had cancer, we wouldn't have to solve the cancer that people didn't know they had.
Oh my God.
It's really, really simple. Just no cancer research. We don't find out anyone has cancer. They don't have to solve it.
So look, I think what's clear here is that
two super chats. Okay, multiple things here. One, before I read the super chats, I'm actually happy that Rob Noor and I agreed on something. Right? It's always fun when you find agreement with your ideological opponents. Rob Noor, in case I want to make sure I don't get your point incorrect, you want to dismantle Ivy League schools. I believe so. Like that would be your ultimate goal, right? That like you don't want money going there, or maybe you don't want to dismantle them. Okay, you just said you want to stop.
They have the right to exist. I mean,
no funding.
Take their
no
money,
funding. No funding.
I don't.
You want no
fund
funding. Period. Okay, well then I still agree with you. I just want to go further. Then I actually want to dismantle them. These universities.
Crazy, but all right.
No, I've talked about dismantling them.
But the cancer, though, Prime.
Right? We can do that. Those anywhere else.
Find other races
just using we can perform those services at other universities. And plenty of universities, public universities, already do this research.
Well,
like Harvard isn't necessarily necessary. But if you're talking about taking away public funding, right? Yeah, I'd be okay with taking public funding away from Harvard.
Presumably, this is the point. The point I was getting to earlier. If I could say this real quick, presumably, when I was talking to Bam and them, I don't think these cancer researchers are heartless. Presumably, they are invested in the work they're doing, and so if the facility moved from Harvard to some government facility or to some private facility that wasn't like a university like this, I'm sure that if you put dozens of billions of dollars into it, that people would come. They would say, great, this is where the good research is being done now. I don't universities that hate me to do that.
Super chat. Did you know that Ivy League schools typically match any grant they get with their own money? Then use that to pull in more funds for the research. Alexander went for $10. Apparently
that wouldn't surprise me, but I didn't know that. But I mean, that wouldn't surprise me.
But yeah,
that they're losing money.
We could take more, Prime. We can always take more.
Yeah, but I mean, look, it's Look, it's just a basic taxation point that you're making, right? That's why it was boring to me.
No,
like,
no, no.
this is
Yeah,
the-
you're right. You're right. It's a basic taxation point, but like what I don't like, and this is what happened earlier, is there's like it's not just a taxation point because there's like a hidden moral loading in the point. Oh, you don't care about kids with cancer. You don't care about the people with AIDS in Africa. You don't care about this. Every single time that Trump or really anybody on the right proposes, like, well, maybe like it's not the role of government to be funding X, Y, Z. The response is always, well, you just want those people to die. You're just okay with them dying. You just don't care. Like we're having the FEMA conversation. How many more? This is going to lead to a whole bunch more deaths in Kerr County. Like this is going to be death, death, death. You're right. If we had the federal government, build every single person in Kerr County their own bunker, maybe we would have no deaths. I don't know, but like obviously, like we can have a rational conversation about what the purpose of federal funding is, and all we're saying is that cancer sucks. That doesn't necessarily mean that we should be giving a bunch of money to Ivy League universities who have these massive endowments that are made up of like the wealthiest, most powerful people on the planet. By the way, why we should be giving them our money to do a job?
It to them.
We are.
What? We're not
giving. It's a weird thing. It's a weird formulation. They are a institution, organization that is fulfilling a purpose, a service, right? They are granted you a job to fulfill a role, right? Just like any other organization, right? Some of them are private, right? Some of them are private organizations. The ones that you guys are naming happen to be private institutions doing a job. I don't know why you guys are now against private institutions doing a job.
No, no. We're against taking like public money.
They're against it going into a specific building. So, like, if all the people at Harvard went to a different building, right, and then they called it a different building.
But what I'm saying,
what the fuck are you talking about, Ali?
They're having different points.
Look, if the Harvard Cancer Center, if we stopped funding the Harvard Cancer Center,
or
all the people went and they went somewhere else, and we funded that,
the MAGA Cancer
specifically,
Center.
Rob,
if it was the MAGA Cancer Center,
Rob, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like you were talking about how you didn't want the funding, right, the public funding, when you were talking about to go to these particular institutions, and instead they should go to other institutions. Correct?
But it's not as facetious as it's because the building it's in, and we could take the entire personnel and entire ideology and slip them. That's what Ollie was saying.
Sure.
To a different building. That's
great. So, but like, so yeah, you're making a different argument, Lactoid, right? You don't want public funding to go. Period. Rob Noor, you made an allowance for public funding to do this work, but not to these institutions because they are hostile to your way of life, right?
I think that there is a hypothetical case to be made that there could be a public benefit that with our tax dollars to funding certain types of medical research. However, the status quo is untenable and it needs to be audited severely more and be far more transparent than it currently is. And so I would eliminate all of that funding right now until those.
Do you guys remember the Elizabeth Holmes thing? Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
The kidnapped child?
That's why. That's there.
That's Theranos.
No, that one. Sorry, the Theranos. I thought it was
Theranos.
a different one.
Yeah,
sorry.
that's right. Yeah, Theranos.
What argument are you making there, Fred?
I don't remember the
Theranos
was there anything real about that? How much
private
federal money did she get? Didn't she? She got mostly private money, but she got federal money as well.
I don't know how much.
Yeah,
but she got...
but actually, a lot of her donors were including like politicians as well, but also like actual billionaires. Like, yes, she got.
Yeah, she got both federal and private money.
The vast majority of it was privit, though.
I don't care. I don't.
If you know that someone committed fraud once, there you go.
It's a scam.
That's
bad.
Hold on. But yeah,
This
is like the argument that something is flawed. A system exists and it can be exploited.
Ben, please, can I just ask? Do you think SpaceX should get any contracts from the government?
Do I think that SpaceX should get any contracts from the government? If they're audited, I would assume that that's okay, but Theranos was never really audited until it was, and then that lady went to jail, right? Is that right?
So then all you had to be done is audited, and then you wouldn't have a problem with it, right? Then we could, as long as we audit every single one of them.
Well, how did we catch them, Prime? I mean, that's a
something. But like we should. No, I agree, Hon. I agree. We should always audit anyone that gets public money, right? We got to make sure that public money is being used.
It needs to be
so then that's not an argument against using public money for to fund research, right? It's just be more careful and audit, right? Then I agree with you.
And be careful who we give it to.
I agree with
sure,
you. Then
I actually
on the same
page.
I
mean, I know some people that work at SpaceX.
I heard they voted for Democrat.
I don't know enough about how much money they get or whatever to comment intelligently on SpaceX.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, they get a fuck ton of money. Hold on,
I
their
would say
entire business
Elon Musk
model
is the
is based on
largest
public.
But
government
they also
contract
put
receiver,
rockets in the
individual.
sky.
Their
So that, you know,
yeah,
I
their
mean, that's,
entire their business is publicly funded. Almost everything is public funding, right? Like beyond their
but they have actually successfully put rockets in space,
yeah,
right?
okay, yeah,
have
sure.
med-
You could
wait,
say
wait, we
Okay,
have
all right,
medications
right,
and
right.
Medical
So-
research
so-
that produce medicines. Like medical research does not produce medications.
yeah,
That's successfully.
most of our medicines come from the university system.
Where do you think these GLP-1
But they didn't
agonists are
use
coming
any of
from?
those medicines, Bam, so they don't exist.
GLP-1s, those Empics, right? Like they came from these
Where are they coming
university
from?
systems.
That all the obesity people
almost
where?
every medicine, almost every medicine you use
wasn't the GLP
has come
one
from that.
it was for like a it had
Diabetes.
another purpose originally. What was it?
It was diabetes, I
Diabetes.
think.
Diabetes?
Yeah,
Type 2
diabetes. That's right. Yeah. Wasn't it privately developed?
No.
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 Certainly-
I
There's
believe
almost-
that was University of Penn.
No,
sorry.
in terms of its foundation, like I don't want to get into the weeds of biochemistry of what a GLP-1 agonist is, okay? But how do we find out what a GLP-1 agonist is? That starts at research institution, fundamental research of how do you actually develop a target, what do you actually want to develop as a pharmaceutical. That all starts at the university level. That is foundational research. You don't know what to develop until you actually define the problem. That starts at the university.
The issue here is, like, I think that if you ask Lactoid that question, my guess is Lactoid's like, yeah, fuck it, stop funding SpaceX. Is that what you say, Lactoid?
Yeah, I think so.
I mean,
I think,
I'm like-
and I want to point out that other people on this panel, because I think very much because of the political affiliations of Elon Musk, you guys really don't like the idea of the government funding SpaceX. And
No, I think
this
SpaceX is a good company.
I think
Oh, yeah.
SpaceX is yeah. I mean, SpaceX.
Because we don't do
is a tough-
NASA anymore.
It's a tough conversation because you can argue that SpaceX, as an organization in of itself, is not politically like aligned, even though the owner might be like in his private time, as opposed to Harvard, where the actual institution is like heavily politically aligned, right?
That has nothing to do with their cancer research center.
Right,
Those
but
are
if you're
non-biased.
but if you're funding a center, if you're funding like an actual organization to do a job, if you're giving a job to somebody to do, like you are giving them something, right? You're giving them a means of financial resources that that institution is then going to use to hire people, to expand its power, to expand its influence, made up of people who, in the case of Harvard or Yale or these other kind of Ivy Leagues, are like openly racist against like Asians and whites, are very much
cancer
incredibly-
research money isn't going towards admissions.
As long as we're
Fungible.
solving cancer,
No.
who cares if they're racist?
Well, then that's a position, but I think that, and I think I do go.
I'm gonna fucking be honest with you.
I
man.
know, fair enough.
Smoked
Look,
salmon
I-
in cancer
I do
centers.
go-
Let's do it.
I do go further than Rob, I think, in the sense that like I want to cut probably most, if not all, this funding to probably a much greater degree. But I do really empathize with the opinion that, like even if we're not going to cut all this, I think it's particularly egregious when we're giving a bunch of this money to organizations that are antagonistic towards me, that are antagonistic towards my beliefs, that are antagonistic towards my existence in some regards. And like for U.S. aid, for example, I mean that was the example that kept coming up. I mean, here's another example. Like, this is in many ways a front organization for the CIA to get involved in foreign countries and to do like external meddling. But of course, when there's any kind of criticism of that, let's cut it. What does the machine do, right? The machine responds by saying, you don't care about the kids, right? This is the bludgeon that they'll hit you in the head with whenever you have a criticism of like, spending, or a criticism of like the organization generally, right? This is an organization that does a lot of bad shit. Maybe if we do want to help kids, it at least shouldn't be going here. Perhaps we can put it somewhere else, to some other organization that isn't a front for the CIA.
And if I can piggyback
you can respond to the super chat, but you can also respond to that and add whatever you want. Alexander went another $10. Thank you so much. He says, all seriousness, do you actually give a shit about people with cancer? Do you care if funding gets cut and we slow progress down substantially? So, like, let's focus on that last section, and you, Rob, you can respond to that and whatever else you want. But like on that last section, if it was the case that by cutting this funding, you vastly slowed down cancer research, and let's say that correlated with more unnecessary cancer deaths. Let's pretend there's a direct correlation here for a second. But if that were the case, would you still be in favor of these funding cuts, please?
I don't know. I guess I could say if we're going to engage in hypotheticals where we could see the future, then I could say, well, it would depend. Let's take that hypothetical a little further and say I could see into the future. If we continue to fund this, we diminish cancer, but then we also lead to perpetual debt and left-wing dominance of our culture and society that leads to open immigration, which leads to the values that our founders thought were so important, like free speech, being eliminated, which then leads to some sort of World War III situation, then I guess no. In that world, it wouldn't be worth it. So the problem is that we won't have any direct proof that if we stop funding here, that the money wouldn't go to somewhere better, or that this money is directly going to lowering cancer rates. But like, it's not just about money. Lactoid's absolutely right. It's about sort of this browbeating of, oh, if you're against cutting any funding, well, then you don't care about the kids. It's also about power in general. Let me give you 2 examples real quick. During the pandemic, when people like me asked serious questions about the validity and the power of lockdowns, the response I got almost universally is, do you want grandma to die? Now, it turns out that we were largely right, those of us that were against lockdowns, particularly the lockdowns of school. I will have this debate with you at any point that you want.
Sure.
It is definitely okay. Which state had the worst reopening?
Before we go down that route, let's not go down that route yet.
Fine. I could have this debate with you some other time.
Yeah,
then I could say this: how many of you were in favor of the Patriot Act? What do you want kids to die of terrorism? You fucking monsters!
I do.
You want kids to die?
100%.
You see how stupid
That's
this is?
I really do.
Or I could say, what if I made
There's
this
a Muslim on the panel, sir.
Trump, so how many of you are against ICE eliminating or taking illegals and deporting them? How many are against that?
I want to abolish ICE altogether.
Okay, well, what do you want illegals to kill American citizens?
That would be doing me a favor.
Actually.
Yes, thank you.
I mean, see, it's easy to just laugh this up and be facetious. I get it. Let me give you a quick tip.
You asked me a
if you're going to
ridiculous
do that
question.
shit, at least be funny. Like, to just
You
laugh.
asked me.
I've made Blackwood laugh a handful of times. I'm a little bit funny.
Okay, I would like to respond to the super chatter. Yeah, I want all kids to die of cancer. It'll be better for me. More parking spaces for those handicapped spaces that I want to eliminate too.
Can I ask a question to the people on the left? Can I ask a question to the people on the left then, right? Let's just do the other way around. There are conservative universities. They exist. Ones that cater to them, especially like the Christian type, right? Like I think George Mason University is one of those. There's a few of these.
Hillsdale, Liberty.
Liberty University. Yeah. There's a
Do
few
they
of
believe
these.
In science?
Let's ignore that part. We need to ignore that part for now. Let's assume that they do. But let's say they had a medical research arm, right? And let's say it's an effective one. Like they could take over these services. Would you all be against that going to those universities? Going to those universities if they are actively anti-gay, actively they're a Christian university, they might be anti-Muslim. Some of these places are like against or anti-miscegenation, right? Some of them have rules for like years, like decades, where like students of different races couldn't date, right? Like, so if they had all that, but they were effective cancer research centers, would you be against funding going to them?
Not if they funded Israel, but other than that, we got it.
Okay, yeah. So
I could compartmentalize their cancer research portion and still have other. Like I'm not weak enough to like be afraid to like, oh, what about how it's going to impact the culture in other ways? Like culture, there's so many other ways you can impact culture. And like I said, but can I read like 2 paragraphs from this little excerpt, this little thing I posted in the chat? It'll take like 20 seconds.
Sure.
So Condoleezza Rice says, 80 years ago, we basically made the decision with Vannevar Bush's important white paper that we were going to make universities the ecosystem, the infrastructure for fundamental research. And it was a really brilliant idea. You would have the Defense Department and the Energy Department and the National Institutes of Health and National Science Foundation, which would come later to fund fundamental research in universities, which were cheap because labor wasn't that expensive. You would find 2 kinds of innovations from that. 2 kinds of breakthroughs. Some were commercializable fairly quickly, and we saw companies come out of that. And some would have to wait a while until they prove their value. Now you would say in the first case, maybe industry would be prepared to do that work, basically saying like private research. But think about how long it took for work on neural networks to actually become the AI revolution that we're seeing now. Because it took the link between the research that started in the 1940s and 50s on neural networks, then the GPUs to be able to do it. And now we have this revolution in AI. Last paragraph. Sometimes you have to wait, and commercial entities can't wait. So having the fundamental research in universities is absolutely critical. My concern is we don't have a plan B. If it's not going to be done in universities, where is it going to be done? At one point, it was done in Bell Labs, but when Bell Labs became a cost center for AT&T after the breakup of the Baby Bells, Bell Labs Center went under, and most of those people fled to universities where they won multiple Nobel Prizes. So, like, and this again, this is a conservative woman who worked directly in the government, and she seems to have a fundamental understanding of how
Shout
this
out to
works.
Condoleezza.
But I don't understand why Prime's nodding his head. He said he wants to not only stop the funding, but eliminate entirely.
No,
Make it illegal for
Ivy League institutions. He's okay with the funding, I believe. It's the
I'm okay with the funding.
Ivy League.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry. No, to be clear, I'm against elite institutions. Period. I see a friend. I'm against elite institutions. Period. But I'm not against the funding going to other universities, other institutions. And
but it would be the same thing.
Same research.
The criticism that Condoleezza is making here is we have this infrastructure, and where would it go if we eliminate it? By eliminating these Ivy League schools, you would eliminate that infrastructure. You'd say, well, we would have to rebuild the infrastructure at other universities, which would then quickly become elite universities.
I don't know if that's the difference between them becoming elite universities. I'm not sure if it's that funding. Like that's an interesting question. Why do we call some universities elite than others? And I don't know if it's necessarily because they get more government contracts to do medical research.
Why do you want to eliminate them? So how do you define elite?
I'm talking about the Ivy League. That's how I'm defining the elite.
Okay, but won't there just be something that takes the place of Ivy League that'll become the new prestigious?
I would get rid of. My problem is with the private institutions. Period. Not like public institutions. So as long as those were going to public schools, the students were going to public schools, then that would fulfill my political goals. That's completely different from what you're talking about. It's different from what you're talking about. I have a good one, guys. So $10 super chat. Just gonna read my super chats. It sounds like you guys are just tired of guilt tripping and see it as a scam now. $10. Another $10. There's your issue. Left-wing dominance. It seems like that's the issue, not any of this other nonsense. And then $5. Nobody gives an F what their policies are. If they are effective, then let them have it. Meaning what I was talking about, like giving that money to conservative institutions. I'd be fine with that. Even if they despise me, if they're effective at it, that means we're not wasting our money, and we're getting something out of it, our public dollars, and it's okay. Whatever. But if anyone wants to respond to that, if Rob Noor, if you're talking to us, then we can't hear you. But to anyone else want to respond to that?
No, I'm done.
I'm going.
I'm going to go to bed.
Take care. Be well.
All right. Well, I guess we'll end things here. Hey, Bam, before you go, hit up FK. FK might want to talk. If FK wants, would you be up time if FK wants to talk, or you got to go to bed?
No, if he's up, yeah, I'm down.
Okay. All right. Well, then hit him up while I'm ending this. All right, guys. Thank you so much. A shout out to Rob Noor, who can't hear me maybe, for being here. Shout out to Grid and all that. Good. Do you want to say something, Rob Noor? You can have the last word if you like, Rob. I can't hear you if you're talking.
You do not know.
Okay, I guess not. All right. Bye, Rob. But anyway, thanks everybody for the discussion. We'll continue on. Thank you, our friend Alexander Wynn, for being so kind as to help out this stream. I really do need that help, so I appreciate you, caring about this community and trying to assist us. I'll send you guys out to I don't know, because as usual, I have not pre-prepared a spot to do a raid. So we will all awkwardly wait around as Prime very slowly waits for his computer to load his dashboard that he can find someone to send these viewers. All our favorite time, right? Where I, after years of doing this, very clumsily wait around to find someone, usually a woman, to send you all off to. Usually someone who has no relation to our community. But it's what I do. right? It wouldn't be the same if I didn't do it this way, honestly, really. So scrolling. Okay. Okay. All right. You might enjoy this one. If you're into ASMR, and if you're into boobs, you might like this. So, oh boy. Yeah, let's oh god. Yeah, let's send you off to this one. Someone is doing that. It'll be fun. Starting the raid. Oh my god, it failed. Oh my fucking god. We're unable. It won't let me raid her. Okay. Okay, let's try this. It literally won't let me. I was gonna give you guys boobs, but like it wouldn't let me give you boobs. So I was gonna send you to someone who was quite attractive. Let's see if okay, this one looks like it'll let me raid. I don't know why it wouldn't let me raid. You've been denied. You've been denied e-girl boobs. I apologize, but this is another woman, so treat her kindly. Just awkwardly waiting around. Usual. Off you go.